All those buttons, man. I'll tell you what, it is a draw because you start putting all these little drops in there when you can, fit them in.
Welcome to the Seahawks Forever podcast. In-depth analysis on everything Seahawks. And now, here's your host, Dan Viens.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to today's live edition of Seahawks Forever, live from Fast Fashion Brewing down in Soto, First Avenue, right next door to Hooverville, across the street from Showbox Soto. We are here for a couple of reasons. We're going to look back at the first 2 weeks of training camp, and we're going to look ahead to Football Fest tonight at Lumen Field at 6 p.m. If you happen to be in the area, either hanging out watching the Mariners or after the game, or you're on your way to Football Fest, stop on by. They've got terrific beers here. Randy and Matt Storm do a great job with this brewery. Most of us are sampling some a little right now. This is a lovely German Pilsner that they have on tap. Corbin's working today, so he's being a good boy. But joining me today, Bryce Coutts, Hawks Own Rundown, Brandon Kane from the Hawks Nest, Corbin Smith from everywhere, Emerald City Spectrum, Locked On Seahawks, hardest working man in the Seahawks business. Corbin, thanks for being here as our special guest today. How are you?
Yeah, thanks for having me. Anytime I can talk Seahawks, even if it is three drunks and a reporter today.
That's right.
We're calling this a round table because it's literally at a round table. That's just, it doesn't happen all the time. Literally. I see a lot of round tables. People call them round tables, but they're in a conference room. They're in a conference room, and that's just not cool.
Oh, it's a lie.
I don't like it. I don't like it at all. I want to take advantage of your time while you're here, first of all. And we talked about this a little bit last night, but it's still worth talking about because the Seahawks fan base is buzzing today with possibilities of Micah Parsons, right? Yesterday, he officially requests a trade from the Dallas Cowboys, so that immediately kickstarts the whole rumor mill. Lots of fans have differing opinions. First of all, I just want to get your general thoughts, and then I thought I would throw at you some of the most commonly used reasons that I'm getting from fans the last 24 hours not to make the move, and let you debunk each of those points. But just your general thoughts when you heard the news that Micah Parsons sounds pretty legitimately wants out of Dallas. The connections to Seattle are pretty obvious. Is there a chance here?
Look, I think this is more than a Lloyd Christmas chance. This is more than a 1 in a million. And the reason I'm going to say that, this did not feel like, when we saw Terry McLaurin the other day, it's like just reporters coming out, he wants a trade. Micah Parsons came out and basically he wrote a novel. He clearly, and
scorched earth.
The guy was at their OTAs and he had a helmet on, like he was doing stuff. And now he's sitting back and he explained everything that happened. And Jerry Jones, you guys saw the clips of what he was saying. Like, why would you say that about your best player? Like, it's mind-boggling to me. It's idiotic. And look, I get why Micah Parsons wants out now. And so this did not feel like one of those things where, well, if we just throw you a few more loaves of bread, then maybe we can fix this. Maybe that is what happens. But that did not sound to me like this was just about money. This sounded to me like the process and the disrespect that was there. And even compared to Trey Hendrickson, I mean, Trey Hendrickson's coming back for, I'm assuming, a hold-in, but Micah Parsons doesn't sound like he has any interest in doing anything like that. And so I think if you had to ask me right now, I'll explain why there's a good chance that Seattle could be in the mix here if he is going to move. I would still be leaning that he's going to be a Dallas Cowboy this year. But this is not one of those, it's just a rumor mill type thing, or he's just upset, it'll get fixed. Like, this feels legit to me based on what we saw with that post.
It does, and these things do have a way of getting fixed, sometimes seemingly overnight. We saw it with Myles Garrett, earlier this offseason. He wrote not as strongly worded farewell message to what Micah Parsons wrote yesterday, but it was along the same lines, basically talking about his time in Cleveland as past tense, and then just 5 weeks later, he has a new deal. But what I wanted to do here, well, and first of all, before we get to that, you guys have had 24 hours now, a chance to sleep on this, and also interact and get some of the feedback from your viewers and watchers. Where do you stand on the whole Micah possibility today?
I'm very similar to Corbin in that there's a lot of times with this where you go, it's not that legit. Obviously, the Cowboys have been down this road with CeeDee Lamb and Dak Prescott recently with a similar situation being elongated out in the negotiations. But this was personal, and Jerry taking shots and almost kind of sabotaging negotiations more than just trying to get the lights on him, which everybody says, well, it's all about him getting the attention.
Yep.
This feels a little bit more further beyond that. And the 2 points I go to on this that makes me feel like Seattle has a real inroad to possibly making this deal happen is, one, John's sitting on more money right now than he's ever sat on at this time of year, I think, during his whole tenure. You can correct me on that. And then also the fact that you could put together a creative package. Yeah, I know the 2 first-round picks and a third-round pick would be kind of like a standard issue, but because you have a couple of edges that you have to make a decision on contractually in the next 2 years, grabbing one of those guys to include lowering down the overall cost could make it enough for John to make it tantalizing enough to then jump at that point.
Can I throw in something real quick here?
Yeah.
You trade Derek Hall or Boye Mafe, and then you go sign Jadeveon Clowney while also having Micah Parsons.
Right.
And
That works.
I think you're in a great situation. You got guys that have played in the scheme, and Micah Parsons and Adam Durde are very close. So you're like you said, there are assets there. You could turn around to Dallas and say, hey, you guys are going to need an edge. We don't, Boye Mafe is going to be a free agent just like Micah Parsons. You guys can work something out with that. So
Yeah.
I'm saying there's a chance.
Right.
And to your point, can you think of other teams in the league that might look for Parsons who have that kind of piece that they can kind of add? Not that Maffey's a deal, but he's legit. He's a good all-around player. He'd be worth something to most teams in the league if you need that edge that you're replacing immediately, and I don't think these other teams do.
And he'd be a good scheme fit for them, too.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Perfect scheme fit.
Yeah, I think everything he just said there, I sign off on. That's why I think that this is not a Lloyd Christmas type thing where you're saying there's a chance.
Right.
I feel like if he's actually going to get moved, I don't think there's more than 2 teams that have a better setup to get Micah Parsons in the Seattle Seahawks.
100%.
Yeah.
100%.
I thought what I would do is throw some of these objections that I'm getting from fans at you, and maybe one at a time you can give me your thoughts on them, because there seem to be 4 that stand out above the rest. First of all, why do we need an edge player? We're good there. We have enough. I literally had a guy tell me last night, if you get Parsons, he never comes off the field, and so you're wasting the rest of your edge depth. What would you say to that?
Get the hell out of here. That's what I'm saying. No, look, Micah Parsons, and I would say this about Trey Hendrickson too. Like, Trey Hendrickson has more pressures than anybody in the NFL the last 4 years, and that includes Micah Parsons. So, like, you're talking about 2 guys that are just absolute game wreckers. But Micah Parsons is 4 years younger. Micah Parsons has more positional versatility. Like, you can't tell me Mike McDonald is not sitting there already just having the gears humming in his brain like, ooh, I can sugar the A-gap with this guy. Or he is equally dominant rushing from both sides, which not many guys can do. And he is one of those players. And so you get a chance. This is one of those cases, like, when he becomes available, there is not a team in the NFL that is not discussing this.
Right.
Like, he is a top 3 defensive player in the league. He is a guy that can win Defensive Player of the Year any given year. And like I said, he's 26 years old. It's not like he's going to the twilight of his career. He is just now getting into the prime of his career. You always can find ways to get your other guys in the field, and there's no such thing as too many good pass rushers. But when you can get an elite Hall of Fame caliber one,
right.
62 and a half sacks
in his prime,
seasons.
27 years old. Yeah, and we talk about this all the time. This touches on one of my major pet peeves when it comes to perception of roster building, right? That we're good there, we're set. we had this discussion 3 weeks ago. We all thought that we were going to have a hard time deciding who was going to fit in our running back room on the 53-man roster, right? But guess what? Injuries happen, and now suddenly you have 4 guys vying for 3 spots instead of 4. Same with the edge. They usually keep 5. Travis Gibson was on this roster last year, didn't play much, but he was on the active roster. We know Nwosu's injury issues. What worries me is whenever I go to the beginning of a practice and I see the edge group over working on the sleds, there's only 3 of them. And maybe Nwosu watching off to the edge. But it's just, because the other guys, they have working more with the defensive linemen than they do with the edge group. It's just, that group can be whittled down quickly. But also to your point, and I'm usually conservative when it comes to this. I like to prospect hug for the most part. I like to draft pick hug for the most part. But when someone like Micah Parsons is available, you just do whatever you have to do.
Just one other point to it, with he's talking about Mike McDonald's defense and how you can use this as a piece. Because with Micah, he demands the double teams, and so much of what Mike likes to do is the stack boxes, pull out of the stack boxes to a 4-man front.
Yep.
But if he can have a guy dictating the double teams to Micah pre-snap with what they've aligned, and then
You
he's
put
dropping
him and
into
Leonard
coverage.
Williams next to each other.
Oh.
We were talking about that last night.
That
That's
is
what
a
we would do.
defensive coordinator's pipe dream.
Put him on the
Oh,
same
God.
side. Yeah, absolutely. That'd be
Just-
fantastic.
Good luck.
Well, and you think of it too, when you add Micah Parsons to this equation, like Corbin just said with Leo Williams, and now you've got Byron Murphy, who you're expecting to take a jump in year 2 in the middle there on the other side. How do you align that with protection? Are you going to max protect almost every play and just hope in some respect that you're going to be able to deal with that pressure, and depending on where it's going to come from? Like, you're getting a bunch of nightmares just set up for any offensive coordinator. And for myself, I'd be sitting there going, yeah, okay, I'm just hoping I can get the ball off.
And you're not accounting for the fact that, oh, by the way, Devin Witherspoon and Nick Eamon-Warrior are probably both going to be on the field at the same time, and you're playing, who the hell's going to blitz?
Yeah.
Is it both? Is it one or the other? Like, the amount of stuff that you can do. Like, Mike McDonald, that would be a mad scientist's dream right there, having all those pieces. So, yes, I think if you're looking at, well, we have edge guys. You have guys. You don't have
Right.
Micah Parsons.
Right. And only one of them's under contract beyond this year.
Yep.
Number 2, it would just cost too much in trade. We have too many future needs coming up. We can't part with those first-round draft picks.
No, I'm going to say no again on that. Again, if this was just like a borderline All-Pro guy that we were talking about, then yes, I'm saying I'm like, even with Trey Hendrickson because of his age,
Right.
Like, I'm not giving up a first rounder as part of a trade for him. I'm saying I'll give you a second. I might include Boye Mafe or something, and maybe a day 3 pick. But age matters when you're talking about these things, and I don't think that he's near as versatile. Like, he is a one-side guy, very, very good on that one side.
Right.
But when you have a chance to get a player like this that you can move anywhere on the line of scrimmage, and he is equally disruptive, teams have to pay attention to wherever he's at and what he can do opening things up for the rest of your defense. Like, I'll say this right now, I'd give up a first-round pick the next 3 years to get it.
Oh, my goodness.
I would.
Sonny Weaver.
I might too.
Sonny
I might
Weaver
too.
stepping up to the plate here, making a deal.
Think about it, though. Like, again, he is in the prime of his career,
Yeah.
and I just want you to think, he's averaged, I think, 25 quarterback hits a year.
Yeah.
The Seahawks hadn't had an edge do that since 2018 until last year.
Well, it's probably the best edge that you've had in your history, with even all of the good edges we have from Jacob Green on down. This is the best one if you brought him in than you've ever had.
Yeah.
Maybe you had guys like Kearney that've had like the 1 year off where they've been awesome,
Right.
but purely on how good he is as a difference maker. And I
Grant
can come back to
Wistrom,
that.
Wistrom's another guy that was kind of in his prime when we got
Your
him. It kind
ideal
of felt the
trade
same.
package here would probably be 2 firsts and like a
And a
third
player.
and a player.
Yeah.
I think that's what you're looking at. But I'm saying if they were just wanting draft picks and you could just say 3 firsts, like, I would find some other ways to try to refuel my draft picks later down the line is what I would do. And you have some pieces that might not be affordable for you down the line that you could maybe move.
And to your point on this, you worry about giving up first round picks if you're not going to be able to then have your avenue to go get your quarterback. And because they've really locked in their quarterbacks for the next 2 years here for the most part, that's not as much. Maybe you feel a little bit more willing to
You
throw
might
that money
feel
on
a
the
little
table.
more comfortable with that.
Yep.
Yeah. To me, again, I'm saying 3. That ideally is not where you go, but I'm just saying that's the kind of player you're talking
And
about.
it might go there though, because we got a lot of teams are going to be in on this, and you got to maybe come forward with the strongest offer with it.
Yeah.
That's why I come back to maybe you can knock down to the 2-1 in Amafe because you have that edge to
You
lower
have
it
the
down.
assets. You have the assets away from the draft picks to intrigue. I mean, hell, even somebody like, there's been discussion about frustration with Trayvon Diggs down there. Like, is Reek Woolen potentially somebody? Now, I think Seattle would be making a mistake doing that because I worry about their depth after the first couple guys at corner.
Well, bring Diggs back then.
Let's
just make this trade bigger.
Dude, you'd have to take on a lot more money then. But the point is, like, I feel like Seattle does have assets that away from draft picks that even Jerry Jones said, I might be interested in this trade.
I'm going to do it.
Second best group of under 25 talent in the league, according to ESPN in their latest ranking.
Yep,
So
you've got pieces.
A lot of guys that might fit. Do the Cowboys need any spare young guards? Because we have about 27 of them on the roster that we can spare. We'll get to those guys. We'll talk about them a little bit
Corbin,
later.
I got one question for you too, though, on this. So when we're talking about draft capital and draft picks, would you not say Seattle's potential for their need of drafting an edge with a first-round pick in the next couple of years is there as well? Like, and you can go get Parsons, who you know is an established player at the same point with that draft pick.
I'd have it right now. I would have it at number 1 atop my list, including over guard, because I don't. Like, you just drafted a guard in the first round. I don't see you doing it the second time anyway. This edge class this next year looks like it's going to have a lot of really good players in it. To me, that is because Maffei's a free agent. Nwosu, even if he's healthy this year, like you're dealing with the contract situation with him. Do you want to bring him back with the injury history? DeMarcus Lawrence is still a really good player, but he's 33. Like there is a Mount Everest-sized crevasse after those top 4 guys too. Like no offense to Tyreke Smith and some of the other guys on this roster, but like and they've got a lot of undrafted guys that are under 250 pounds. Like Micah Parsons is that, but Micah Parsons is a mutant. Like normally. Mike McDonald doesn't play guys that small off the edge.
Well, and that's one of the things too is we've seen in the last few months like this secondary edge market, right? Guys like Gregory Rousseau and George Karlaftis, they're getting $20 million a year APR. They're getting $50 million guaranteed. And they're not elite players. If that's Maffei's market, I'd rather pay twice that to a Parsons.
It's a good point. That's the thing is you come back, okay, I don't want to pay the $43 million. Well, do you want to then 22, 23 then where Maffei will be after this year when you pay him?
For a guy you're still not sure of.
That you're not sure if he's going to take that step to where he is. Yeah, that's the middle class with edge rushers is a tough place to be if you're an NFL team right now.
It is.
Yep. Which leads us to the third biggest objection I'm getting in the last 24 hours, which is the contract. It'd be too much. We have too many other young guys we want to extend. I don't want to play in that range. It's too much. We can't do it.
Do you want Micah Parsons, who's a perennial first-team All-Pro, or do you want a combination of Boye Mafe and Derek Hall with both being good, but you haven't seen anything that suggests
it's really the Moneyball argument almost, right? It's like, do you want to try to create a pass rush in the aggregate and spread the money out? Or do you want a guy that can dominate a game, cause headaches for defensive coordinators, But
with the middle class money, though, this doesn't feel like a Scott Hatterberg type situation. Like Scott Hatterberg wasn't getting the baseball equivalent of $22 million a year so that he could be average, or he can get on base a lot. Like unless one of those guys just emerges, and maybe that happens this year, maybe the Seahawks believe one of those guys is going to blow up, but if he does, then it just means the price tag just goes up. To me, this might actually be the least viable point, in my opinion. You pay elite players, and this is a position, non-quarterback, the guys going after the quarterbacks are the ones you pay that kind of money to because of what they do to impact the modern game.
And I used to stress way too much over salary cap implications and contracts, but at the end of the day, it just seems like whatever a team wants to do, they can do. Even the ones that don't do it well. The ones like New Orleans that just get themselves into trouble every year. Every offseason we think, well, they're not going to dig out of that one. And they do. But the Seahawks are top 6 in cap space. I look at it this way now. I don't ever really look at cap space anymore and then try to do the math in my head on how that can be distributed among the players. It's just the more cap space gives you the more flexibility. And it allows you to be creative and do the things you need to do to move stuff around. Correct me if I'm wrong, but in my opinion, if they did this and they went out and they committed to a new deal and they're paying Micah Parsons $40 million a year, it wouldn't impede their ability to re-sign any of these other young players that are up for extensions at all.
No, Dan, and here's the big reason why. They've got $35 million on the books right now that's available. Whatever's left over after that is going to roll over to next year.
Right. Right.
And so it gives you a ton of flexibility to still be able, if you want to re-sign somebody like a Reek Woolen or one of those guys, or if Abe Lucas has a good year and you want to keep him around, or if you want to get, Charles Cross, you have even more flexibility because you got the 5th-year option that you picked
at a nice number. I'm fine just letting it play on that.
Yeah. So my point is that they can do all the other things they need to do roster-wise, and you can have Chandler Parsons. These are not exclusive worlds. No. We are not in a Marvel multiverse here. This can all be in our normal universe. We can have this.
no bubble universes needed to make this go. The other part is the 26 and 27 cap space that impacts this. Because not only are you where you're at with the cap space now, but you're top 7 in cap space for 26, top 10 in cap space for 27 with Cup deals, with Lawrence deals that will probably come off the books by that point.
Nwosu's still on the books for 26.
So there's a ton of space to move this. You're also
there's levers.
There's levers, and you're at about a 5% versus like the Eagles on the voidable year trek that they've taken, you've cleared the books really well to set the stage. If you want to throw void years down and kind of stretch this out a little bit, given the guarantees within it, you can do that as well to still then manage those contracts.
Take advantage of doing that while you can, because the NFL is talking about trying to strike down on that. So do it until it
Now's
can.
the best
Jerry's leading that too. He's like, I'm tired of these void money years. Pay them, that's what they get. Nothing else. Damn it.
But we don't know if they're going to play or not.
Jerry really is a South Park character.
He is.
The way that he talks.
Man.
He is. it's like when he's giving his son a hard time. He's like, Taco.
You can do anything in my press box.
They took our pass rusher.
Mike is only 6 inches. I need a 7-inch man if that's going to happen. That don't going to work here. Okay.
This was not on the rundown, by the way. One final thing on Parsons too that I think is worth talking about is, John Schneider, when he was a young, impressionable front office intern and an assistant working his way up through the Green Bay Packer organization, he saw firsthand the impact that adding Reggie White to that team had.
Yep.
And at the time, Reggie was older. I think he was 31 at the time of the deal. But that was as big a deal as the one we're talking about here. Like, there were people, at the time, it was earth-shattering. It was crazy. What are they thinking? They're an established team. They're already good. Why do they need to? And he got him a ring.
That's exactly why you do this.
Yeah.
Exactly
because
right.
the Seahawks have a lot of really good players. What they are lacking right now is the blue chippers. They don't really have. I think Leonard Williams fits that description. I think Leonard Williams is a really, really good football player. And I think he falls in that line. But if you want to win a Super Bowl, like Philadelphia's got a couple of blue chippers on both sides of the ball.
Yep.
You need to have those stars that can elevate you. Micah Parsons is the guy that can do that. And Seattle has a couple young players that I think Nicky Manwari can be that guy. I already believe that. See what I've seen. But you don't know yet. You can't put those kind of expectations on a rookie. And you're like, look, Micah Parsons, we already know what he is.
Yeah.
And he's 26 again. He's a young guy. So
Can we talk offensive line a little bit?
do we have? I'm game for talking O-line.
A couple things stood out yesterday. The last 2 days, actually, because Brandon and I been out there Thursday and Friday, and I was out there Monday also this week. So Mike McDonald said at the beginning of training camp he'd like to have the 5 settled sooner rather than later, right? You got to pick the right guys as early as possible.
Yep.
They've got to build some continuity and chemistry. That was a big issue last year. We saw heavy rotation last week in camp, and even I saw Monday at center and right guard. It was almost an even split at times between Oluwatimi and Sundell at center, and then Haynes and Bradford at right guard. Yesterday, it looked to me like there was no question that Oluwatimi is the starting center. And based on the last 2 days in practice, it looks like right guard is settled. Is Anthony Bradford the starter at right guard?
No. I'm going to tell you why not.
Jalen Sundell.
Jalen Sundell is still getting enough reps there. That one actually feels to me, because that position's been so weird. Yeah. Because the first week, Anthony Bradford was just playing with the 2s. And then this previous week, we've seen him start to get the one that seems to be the odd man out right now is Christian Haynes, and I think a lot of it.
Saving him for the end.
A lot of it has to do with the center position, but we'll talk about that here in a second. As far as the right guard spot goes, right now it's looking like it's trending towards Bradford being the guy. The problem is it still feels like you have half a player there. He is probably the best run blocker they have in this entire roster.
Yeah.
And including in the zone blocking. Like, he is more athletic than you would think at his size, and he came in a little leaner. The problem is he is still lunging like crazy in pass protection, and it drives you nuts, because you're like, if you just fix that part of his game where he isn't doing that, he has enough athleticism that he ought to be able to pass protect. Yeah. But it just isn't coming together. Dan, you've watched you've probably seen some of the one-on-ones the last few days. Yeah. He gets on the front of his feet and he falls forward. And
even in the team stuff yesterday, there was a moment where we were like, I think you said to me, you know what though, he's kind of playing, he's looking good today. And I said, yeah, I hate to admit it, but he is. On the very next rep, he lunges, misses a guy, goes right by him, almost falls on his face.
It happens way too much. So you kind of get in a situation where like, do I want to just put this guy in because we want to run the football and we're trying to get back to that, but then let's pray to God we can keep Sam Darnold upright with him in there, or Jalen Sundell is not as physically imposing, but he can do the zone stuff that you want. Yeah. He is a much more consistent pass protector from what I've seen on the practice field. and he's a guy that you can have some interchangeability with. Anthony Bradford is a right guard. So I still think that position is very open. I would not be shocked if Satawa Lamea gets involved in this at some point too, because he's played some with the right guard second team this week, which they hadn't been doing. So I'm wondering if John Benton's kind of starting to think like, maybe I want to look on that front. It's just, it doesn't feel like there's closure coming there, or you're going to make your selection based on not somebody winning it, but like, well, you've done the least amount of bad things.
Yeah.
The center position, though, I completely agree with you. Oluwatimi is the guy at this point.
I feel like he looks better every time I watch him.
I think he's had a good camp.
Why have they got to the point with Haynes, though, that they're so... he's a year into this. He's a third-round pick. He's a guy that's supposed to be the zone blocking background with UConn to fit to the system. To see him on the sideline yesterday all day, basically, and now they got him at center where he's whistling snaps up over the quarterback's head. And you go, well, that doesn't make sense to me. I go, I can't add that up in my mind.
Yeah, Dan, actually, you asked me, like, why isn't he getting, why is Christian Haynes not in today?
Once the team portion started, he had his helmet in his hand and he was on the sideline. And it looked like at one point, he noticed, he ran out there and a coach grabbed him and pulled him back, and he didn't take a rep the rest of it.
I think you're seeing a case. John Benton, every guy I've talked to this training camp has said tough love with John Benton. And if you aren't doing your job right, John Benton is not going to let you go out there and just keep wasting reps. He's not going to do that. And a couple of you, I'm assuming 2 of you were here for Thursday. I don't know what happened. That group, I wrote it in my article in Emerald City Spectrum. I think they all hit the snooze button and got there late to practice or something, because they were all out of sorts. Like, Timmy was airmailing snaps. You had nail biters coming after the quarterback, the ankle biters, coming from Jalen Sundell, which he's normally as accurate as anybody snapping the football. But Christian Haynes was the one that got that ball rolling. Like, he had an aborted under center snap that, from my view, was just like, he like basically snapped it up into his backside, so the quarterback had no chance to get it. Next snap, Yao Ming wouldn't have caught it fully extended.
That's funny.
Like, you guys saw it.
Yeah.
So at that point, John Benton, I was watching when it happened. John Benton grabbed him by the shoulder pads and was just like, get the heck out of here. And they put him back in a few plays later, and what's he do? He airmails another snap, and then the next play, it felt like I was watching the movie The Replacements, because every offensive lineman moved except Haynes, and he snapped the ball like 4 seconds later. And it was kind of like, false start, number 67, number 71, number 48, whatever. Like, and guess what? He got pulled out again.
Yeah.
I think John Benton reached a point where it's like, well, you know what? On Friday, I'm not going to waste my reps. You need to learn on the side. And so I don't know if that means he's out of these competitions, but that is never a good sign when you see a coach is saying, I don't want you out there. I don't trust you. I'm not confident in you.
Is it because I felt like there was some of this hinted at last year when Lamea leapfrogged him in some of McDonald's comments.
Starting to wonder about that.
Is it a work ethic thing? Is it an approach to practice thing with him?
I think the other thing you have to consider on that Thursday practice, actually this was Tuesday. This was Tuesday's practice. The snaps were better when they had Haynes at center, but Quentin Bohanna took his lunch money like 3 times in the inside, just tossed him aside like he weighed 15 pounds, like a bag of potatoes, just tossed him to the side. I think they're seeing this film, right guard, there's been inconsistencies from him. You just aren't seeing him step up the way that John Benton and these guys were hoping he was going to. And maybe he turns it around. I hope he does, because I loved his college tape. And every coach that I talked to that worked with him, whether it was Jim Mora, his offensive line coach at UConn, the Senior Bowl coaches, raved about his work ethic.
Yeah, Mora doesn't put up with that stuff if you're not on point.
You wouldn't have been playing. You wouldn't have been playing. Like, so yeah. I don't even know if it's a work ethic thing. It just seems like something is not connecting. Something's not, and I thought in this system with UConn, like, I talked to Christian earlier this week, and he was talking about just how much carryover there was to what he did at UConn. Yeah, this should be a system that is second nature to him compared to a lot of the other guys in this team. And there's been good moments. I thought he was moving. I mean, he was getting all the first team reps the first week. But now you're just like, he's going in the opposite direction.
And quickly. Like, yeah, it ain't just like, rapid, well, they're a little off. It's just like, you ain't letting him on the field for a whole practice, and a long practice yesterday at that, where there was plenty of room to get a couple extra reps in there and just make sense.
I don't think he had a single team rep. I don't remember seeing it. Yeah, That is never, like, if you are, like, unofficially suspended, but you're on the field, that's not...
Especially for a position that's not exactly like our
Settled.
strongest position.
It's- I'm hoping he gets it turned around because I think he's got a lot of talent, but for whatever reason, it is just not working. It's not showing up.
Do you think, Corbin, that if this doesn't turn around or it doesn't get remarkably better going in the other direction, do you think he's now a cut or trade candidate at the end of this preseason?
Yeah, because I thought Anthony Bradford was going to be that guy. I think you reached the only thing that might save him is we've seen nothing from Bryce Coutts to this point. Like they've had Mason Richmond taking right guard snaps with the third team over him. So that's never a good sign either. And I just can't tell you I've seen anything that's jumped out positive from. I mean, I can't.
Is that why we saw Cable do it left tackle yesterday? Because they're just trying to find a spot.
They're
for
trying
him?
to figure out a way to get him involved. Yeah, to this point, just maybe he figures it out in the preseason. Sometimes guys have the light switch go on in game action, but yeah, he's been. Mason Richmond had some nice blocks yesterday. I'm actually a little bit curious about him as a guard. You know, maybe that's a guy you start looking at.
Yes, I saw him on one rep. I think he locked Peely up pretty well.
Yeah.
I said something to you about it. Yeah, it was. That was interesting that he
might not have the athletic specs that that Bryce Coutts does, but he still had good agility testing numbers.
Yep.
And he started 52 games in a row at Iowa, and he played through a broken leg at Iowa. I'm kind of curious. I'd like to see a little bit more of him, and it seems like the Seahawks are emulating that because they are pulling him inside, and they're giving him more reps as a guard now, and it seems like Coutts is the one that is losing the opportunities there.
I hate to ask this question because I've spent the last 6 months telling people to calm down, that there's enough talent on hand. All they had to do was figure out who the right guys were to play, and it was going to come together. But if an Anthony Bradford ends up winning that right guard job, and or it's still unsettled, right? There's the old saying when it comes to quarterbacks that if you have two, you have none, right?
Yeah, I think you could say that with guards too.
Are you now then around the cut down date looking around the league for help?
You know, Brandon Scherf's still available.
But is he good anymore?
He had a decent year last year. Yeah, I mean, I went back and watched his tape. I mean, I'm just throwing out what I think that would be the best option if you were going to have to.
What about a guy like, I don't know if he's a scheme fit, but what about a guy like Will Hernandez? He announced the other last week on his socials that he's healthy now for the first time in years, or maybe someone we're not even thinking about.
But I think Brandon Scherf, even at his age, I think Brandon Scherf is a better fit athletically for this scheme. He still can move. You know, maybe. I still say this, like, if you are that concerned about your right guard spot, like, instead of trading, Micah Parsons, I think, is an amazing idea, but instead of trading for him, New Orleans is perpetually in cap hell. Like, they just are. And you call them up, they just signed a couple guards in free agency and say, look, what is it going to take to get Cesar Ruiz? Because Cesar Ruiz had the best year as a pro last year playing for John Benton. And say, look, he's under contract for a couple years. Like, we might be willing to give up a second-round pick to go get him. And see if you can get New Orleans to explore that. Because then if you had Ruiz, Oluwatimi, and Zabel as your interior, all these guys are 26 and under, I'd feel a heck of a lot better about my situation than, well, Anthony Bradford won this by default.
What if they ask for a 1? Because they say that we got to eat the dead money.
Well, if you can get something else back in return, like if you could get like a day 2 pick or something back, I might consider it. Because I think he's that kind of a player.
I like him too. I think that's what they'll do is because they're in that cap and that he just signed that deal. I think it's going to be some acceleration on the bonus money.
Yeah. If they try to. Yeah, that's a good point. I'm just throwing out an idea here.
I love it. No,
makes
I do.
A lot of sense.
And look, I would be probably willing to do it even at the 1 because this offensive line has been such an issue. Let's get the damn thing corrected. It's been like almost not 10 years.
And he's a perfect fit for this offense. Yeah. He showed it last year. Like the offense they ran before was not a good fit for him, but he is a dancing bear. Like that's the kind of guy you want. But him and Gray Zabel at the guard spots, again, I would feel a heck of a lot better than what I would with the situation.
Also gives you some center versatility if you need it in the pinch.
Yeah, you could if you wanted to move him into the center spot if Oluwatimi doesn't get the job done. Yeah, there's a lot of. I don't know that I would trade for Parsons before that just because I think he's that kind of a dude. But Cesar Ruiz would be a player, and I've been mentioning this since May, that I think would make a lot of sense.
Anything new on Charles Cross? We saw him out there in a jersey at least yesterday.
He'll be ready, but he'll be ready between that Packers game and 49ers.
And we actually all kind of agreed. I think that Josh Jones looked okay.
He's at a good camp, and I'll tell you what, Mike Jarrell. Can we talk Mike Jarrell here for a second? Mike Jarrell looks like a different cat out there this year. He didn't play any left tackle last year.
Yeah.
He looks like that's a better fit for him than right tackle.
Yeah.
And I got a couple guys here smiling about it. I like 65, man. And he had some good tape last year. There was some rough tape, but like for a 6th rounder coming out of a D2 school,
playing right tackle when he's
to
left
get
tackle.
thrown into the fire. I mean, Ken Walker, 2 of his touchdowns happened because of Mike Jarrell. Like, he was the one that made those blocks. So, look, I think they got better tackle depth than they have had in a long time. I feel pretty confident with that. Now you just got to figure out that dang right guard spot. That's the one spot. I'm comfortable with Gray Zabel. I think Gray is going to be a good rookie. I think he's got a chance to be an all-pro caliber player in time. He's that kind of a dude. Oh, Timmy was good last year. I'm confident that he can at least be a top 10, top 12 center, which that's light years better than they've had.
Yeah.
And the tackle depth is there. So to me, it's just that right guard spot. But the thing is, if you don't have that settled, it hurts everybody else on your offensive line, and they can't play to their level.
Now, all that being said, and I think we were all in agreement on this yesterday, even though it wasn't a full padded practice, you can still read some of it into this. It was my 6th practice I'd seen, and it was, I thought, the best pass protection that the quarterbacks had. And I thought it was maybe the best overall day that they had as well. It was a good day all around for the offense yesterday, and especially the offensive weapons. There were guys making plays on the outside, tight ends, receivers, you name it yesterday. Maybe no one more so than Torrey Horton, who's having an absolutely fantastic
Torrey.
first training camp.
Well, Dan, you had me on your show before the draft, and I was telling you I thought he was a guy they would target in the 2nd or 3rd round.
Right. Yeah, we all thought he was a day 2 pick.
So if he doesn't get hurt, he might have been a first-round pick. I'm going to go that far. Because
he's looking
if
like
you
him.
watched him against Travis Hunter 2 years ago, there was not a receiver in college football that had more success against Travis Hunter. Like, Dion was double-teaming him in the second half, and it didn't matter. They could not stop him. And he is that – what I think people forget about with Torrey Horton, he is a deep threat. He can win vertically, but he is an after-the-catch maestro, too. Like, this guy can get the ball in his hands, and that's where that punt return experience comes into play. He turns into a punt returner when you get the ball out to him quick, and then he can make a lot of things happen. He's not just fast, he is really quick. We didn't get to see any of that because he only did the 40 time because he was coming back from his injury. He couldn't do the change of direction stuff. He would have tested as a 90th percentile athlete in those. Torrey Horton is a guy I have been extremely excited about. I just didn't know if we were going to see him healthy enough to play to his level. Yesterday, that looked like Torrey Horton that I watched on tape at Colorado State. So get another hype train going for another rookie. I think he's deserving of it.
You hear how that his coach at Colorado State talked about him too, and coaches don't throw that. I mean, they will pump their guys up, but he pulled that aside specifically for him, and it felt like more than just trying to pump up his value, that what he said, he believed in him being a leader and being, that
his receiver
guy,
coach is now at USC, and I asked him on our show on Locked On Seahawks if he didn't even let us finish the question. It was like, would he have been the same caliber star at USC? We didn't even get the question asked. Finished, and he's like, yes, I know where you're going with this, yes. And that guy's coaching a lot of really good receivers now at USC, and he's like, oh, he would be the number 1 guy for us right now. So, but I think they've got 5 receiver spots locked up, to be honest with you. I don't think there's much drama there. Maybe the 6th spot, like a Derek Young is coming on right now. Jake Bobo is on this roster.
Yep.
Torrey Horton is on this roster. Marquez Valdez-Scantling is maybe the only one of those top 5 that I would say, well, you're saying there might be a chance, because if Torrey Horton passes him, is there a role for him? But I think he's on this roster too.
Yeah. So would you say, Corbin, then that 6th spot is kind of a battle between Tariq Young, Cody White, and Ricky White then at this point?
And I would include Steven Sims in there too because of punt and kick. But here's the thing. I think Torrey Horton's going to be your primary punt and kick returner. That's the other thing. I mean, the dude had 3 punt returns at Colorado State for touchdowns. Yeah. I think he's their special teams ace while he's also getting his feet wet as kind of that change of pace vertical guy on your offense. So if he's already filling that void, you can keep a 6th receiver that does other special team stuff. Derek Young is as good as anybody covering kicks and punts on this roster. And like I said, he's had 4 touchdowns this week. He just looks like a different kid out there in this offense. He looks confident. Quarterbacks look confident in him. He's making over-the-shoulder Willie Mays catches like he did yesterday in tight coverage. He made a David Tyree catch earlier this week off of Demarion Williams' helmet on a bad throw and got a touchdown on. I mean, I'm starting to talk myself. I've done this a couple times because he's always had the traits and he just hasn't. Derek Young is I'm starting to talk myself into like, you got to keep him on the roster because there's just too many things he does on special teams that are invaluable. If he can give you offensive contributions, we know he can play out of the backfield. Clint Kubiak loves receivers that can do that. I'm starting to talk myself into that. He can do things that Cody White and Steven Sims aren't going to be doing.
Maybe if it is, maybe he's getting pushed then by him. Derek Young's pushing Scandling rather than it's Horton pushing him, being that Horton can maybe do some of the deep stuff you had outlined for Scandling, so that removes his need for it, but then you can go back and you got the special team.
And Young can stretch the field. Dan, you were there yesterday. You got to see the touchdown he had. You're seeing that low 4.4 speed show up now.
Yeah.
And I've been waiting for it, but I'm just wondering, maybe this is the offense that works best for him. It just seems like he is one of the guys that's just kind of since the beginning of camp, it's just been elevated, a roller coaster.
It's one of my favorite aspects of training camp is every year there's a couple of guys that you kind of forget about.
You write off a little bit.
If they haven't, recency bias. If they haven't done anything recently, you kind of set them off to the side, and then they come out and they remind you that they're there. On the other side of the ball, for me, I feel like that guy this year is Mike Morris. Just failed to take a step forward last year. We expected one, with his history with Mike McDonald and the length and the versatility and the motor, but he just didn't really make an impact or force his way onto the roster. But I feel like he's making plays every day that I've seen anyway at camp so far.
Yeah, Morris has had a good camp. I want to talk about the guy that's pushing him, though.
Jared Ivey?
Look, Jared Ivey, Mike McDonald, I love how genuine Mike McDonald is in his press conferences because he's getting asked about Jared Ivey the other day, who, oh, by the way, had a really good day. He swatted 2 passes down. He had a tackle for a long.
He was active yesterday,
He literally tackled the guy, though. That's the problem. Mike McDonald's smiling well, we had a little bit of an issue. And it was funny because I'm looking back on it, Ivey decked the running back, and then he was oh, and he's trying to pick him up. I didn't bring him to the ground, coach. You need guys like that on your roster, though. I just love the way he gets. There's never a rep that guy is not going 110%, sometimes to a fault in a practice setting. I don't think he's wanting to hurt teammates or anything like that. That's just who he is. And that's how you can have below average athletic traits, but pop against SEC competition when you got a motor like that. And he throws bricks for hands. That was the first thing I had in my scouting report for him. And you're seeing, yesterday they didn't have pads on, and him and Bradford going against each other again. Those two got to skirmish earlier in training camp. So we're all kind of sitting aside oh, boy, get your popcorn ready. And all he did is just drive Anthony Bradford back into the pocket, and he's just relentless with his bull rushing.
He can use his hands, too. On top of having power, he's got some hand usage.
Counters.
And Euro step he can kind of incorporate at times on there.
He doesn't look like...
It's a bad body. It just looks, it's 275, and it's a little
But he looks athletically, when you watch him move, like a much different athlete than his testing suggested. He's one of those kind of guys. But you can have guys like that in the trenches, because when he gets the pads on, he's just... That is a junkyard dog. You don't want to fight against that guy.
And that profile sounds like the type that always plays well in preseason games.
Oh, I'm expecting, just to completely side conversation here, I have never been as excited for a preseason as I am with this roster.
There's a lot of reasons to be, yeah.
Because you get to watch Jalen Milroe, for better or worse, you get to watch Jalen Milroe.
And there's another young player that I think you're probably about to mention, and I want to talk about next. Because I think, while I've been impressed with him every practice I've gone to, this week in particular, I think you can make an argument that Nick Emenwari might be the most dynamic player on the field on defense. He seems to be around the ball all the time and making dynamic plays.
I'm making this prediction right now. Nick Emenwari is going to be wearing a yellow jacket.
Oh.
I am making that prediction right now.
To the game today, or
no,
okay,
down the line.
okay.
Or maybe he will, because he's got. this dude's got swagger.
He's got some
intercepting a pass the other day, and then
I thought you were about to tell us he was going to win Rookie of the Year, but you just went straight to Canton.
Yeah.
Look, and this should not surprise people if you've listened to my podcast. You guys that have been at camp have seen this guy. They had to measure him with a hole in the ground and his feet standing in it, because he is not 6'3". I watched him stand next to Reek Woolen, who is 6'4", every bit 6'4". He's taller than Reek Woolen.
Jeez.
And they list him at 220. I watched him standing next to a couple linebackers listed in the upper 230s, and he's bigger than them. He's 6'4 and a half, 235. And you talk to anybody else that's been on the sideline, I've talked to a bunch of other reporters, and we all agree. He is just...
We need a recount.
He made a play yesterday They ran a sweep out of the backfield with Zach Charbonnet, and Charbonnet was a low 4.4 guy. He ran from the opposite side of the field and got to him at the sideline before he even turned up. Didn't even get to the line of scrimmage. That's the kind of speed we're talking about here. The second pick he had earlier this week, where I'm telling you, Jalen Milroe was doing what every other quarterback would have done. That. You know what? I'm just going to throw it where nobody's going to get it. You forgot you have an X-Men on your defense.
Was it the diving interception? Yeah.
Yeah, and that's where coming in at 6'4.5", he can pivot and he can extend full extension and get his hands underneath, and he's got receiver hands, so he was able to. I mean, that was an incredible pick. I cannot wait to see what that guy is going to do when they get into game situations, because I have seen nothing suggesting to me that Mike Macdonald is going to have an easy time getting him off the field at any point.
No, it's a good problem. But those 3 interceptions, too, to your point, were all these aren't overthrows. These aren't the quarterback had a tip in the air. They were all him making jumps on routes, making great plays on routes, being in the right spot.
The one at the beginning of the week, when I was watching it from the radio row, I thought, oh man, that was a really bad decision by Jalen Milroe. I watched the replay from a different angle when the Seahawks posted on their social media. I'm like, no, it looks like Brady Russell is open.
He baited him.
But then he baited him. And when you got a 6'4.5" guy that baits you like that, like he just comes in and picks up that ball like a loaf of bread. I mean, look, I don't like to get the hype train rolling with rookies too much, but dang it, this is a 2035. What are those missile trains that they're trying to build that you can go from LA to New York in like 45 minutes or whatever the heck it is? That's Nick Emanwari in football terms. That's who he is.
To your point, though, like you've seen Lano Hill through here, you've seen Tedrick Thompson through here,
I've seen a lot of bad young safeties.
Have you ever seen any safeties that were bad, though, that went out and had a great training camp like he's had through the beginning part of this training camp, flashing this often?
No, I mean the only safeties that I've ever seen that came through that had. I wasn't covering the team when Cam Chancellor and Earl Thomas were here, so I can't speak to that. But Ryan Neal had really good training camps. Ryan Neal doesn't have the traits, like he had the size, but he doesn't have the speed or quickness or any of the stuff that. And quite frankly, Nick Emanwari, like I said, he's just got that. He's got that. I know I'm really good. I'm going to go show you I'm really good. He's got that swag to him. Like, he's planning his celebrations ahead of time because he knows it's going to happen. Like, you got to have guys like that. Like, he would have fit perfectly with the Legion of Boom. Yeah. He would have been a perfect player for that defense.
Yeah. How are they going to use him? Does Witherspoon go to the outside? Is that the way we fix it?
So Witherspoon had a pick yesterday that was incredible, and he was on the boundary. That was a Richard Sherman-esque pick, like just getting his head around. And Marquez Valdez-Scantling shook his hand afterwards because it's like, out of respect, like that's an incredible pick. Yeah. And he's going to get more opportunities to make interceptions when he's playing a little bit more in the boundary. You don't want to take the slot completely away from him, but I'm thinking when you're in dime sets, you could have him and Nick Emanwari both playing in the slot, and think of the nightmares that offensive coordinators are going to have leading up to a game like that when you're like, I got to deal with not one but both those guys who can do everything.
And you can roll them post-snap wherever you want to roll them.
Yeah, you have, and DeAnthony Bell can play on Sundays too. DeAnthony Bell's had a really good camp. They're going to play 4 safety sets where they're going to be able to, if I'm a quarterback, I'm like, I have no idea who's dropping back. As a guy, I've never been a defensive coordinator, but I'm just thinking the inverted coverages that you can do with this team. And you can get away with it because you got 4-3 guys that can run all over the place. And, I can have you up here, but you can drop back, and I know you're going to be able to cover the guy. It creates, the playbook is just completely opened up with these guys.
And McDonald's able to get deep into it this year because of all the continuity on defense. He seems like he's having a good time. I don't know in any of the training camps I've ever attended that I've ever seen a defensive play caller this early in camp be as aggressive opening up his playbook and going after the offense as I've seen this week.
Well, part of it's because a lot of these guys are back for a second year, and so he can do it. But also the second part is look, he might be wanting to hold back, but when you are passionate about something like he is, calling defenses and mixing and matching and doing X's and O's, and you got a chess piece that comes in like that you can add to what you already have, that has to be incredibly difficult to be let's push back a little bit. It's got to be really dang hard for him to not put his foot on the pedal and say, let's take this full bore with this guy.
He went. They did on the practice the other day. Like I counted like 6-7 times we counted in a row that he ran the blitz on the stack front and then ran it post snap on him. And the last rep he did the 4-man drop, but it's like, whoa, for the guy that was like 22nd, 23rd last year in blitzing, to your point, it speaks to the comfortability, and he's going to maybe start to ratchet.
He didn't
it up
blitz much last year because they were trying to get their feet wet with this defense. They are going to send people a lot in this defense. And God, you could add Micah Parsons to that. I just look.
Should we talk about that? We can talk about that a little bit.
I'll talk about all that all day. I love that. It's such an exciting possibility.
The other thing that I'm seeing as an impact of that is just how much it ramps up the learning curve for this offense that underwent a lot of changes over the offseason. Because from last Wednesday to yesterday, I've seen Sam Darnold's internal clock has sped up so much. I thought he's had a good camp overall, a very good camp. I think last Friday was the only practice I saw where he had a little bit of a rough time, but I think all the quarterbacks did that day. I thought he was his best yesterday and really, really impressive. And I know Bryce was impressed too.
Yeah, no, Sam looked really good yesterday. I don't know, Corbin, like for you looking at this quarterback room now going forward to where it's been, say, the last 7 years, even going back to when Russ and Tavares were here, where does this quarterback room kind of rank for you now?
I think this is from top to bottom the best quarterback room that they have ever had. Because I think here's the thing, Jalen Milroe showed yesterday where he's at. He is not.
Yeah, it was a little bit of a step back.
He's not ready. He is not ready to play extensive snaps on Sundays because he is still occasionally having days where the short accuracy is getting away from him. He had a couple balls that he threw into the ground. At the same time, though, he made a couple throws yesterday. My goodness, the one to Steven Sims at the end of practice, stepped out in the pocket, didn't even have his feet set, 60-yard flick of the wrist, right in the bucket, touchdown. And he had one to Tyrone Broden Jr. That is a guy right there. He's not making this roster, but you better find a way to get him on the practice squad because I think he is a guy you can develop to play on Sundays.
Maybe we don't play him during preseason.
Don't let other teams see him. So Milroe has been good, but you're seeing some of the reasons why he is a third-round pick and he's got a ways to go. Drew Lock has looked great.
He looks different than he did 2 years ago.
And I've said this all training camp, and I'm sticking with it. I think Drew Lock is easily the most talented in terms of arm talent on this quarterback room. And that's not a knock on the other two guys. The other two guys, I think all three of these guys have 90th percentile arm talent. I just think Drew Lock, you could make a case that in terms of just pure juice, he might be one of the top 5 or 6 guys in the NFL in terms. You see him when he drops back, even it's like a 20-yard throw over the middle, like that guy just literally just flick of the wrist at a 98-mile-an-hour fastball. Like the ball just is electric coming out of his hand.
Because he was doing that drill that you like.
He is, Drew Lock has cut down on his picks. He had a really bad one a couple days ago, but that was more about Tavarian Williams just baiting him on that play in the red zone.
Oh, yeah, in the red.
Late. He was late on the throw, but that's a third or fourth string corner that has played for Mike Macdonald. He has played in games for Mike Macdonald. So I think Drew Lock, if you had to start him for an entire season, I would have confidence that you could do something with your offense. And that's not saying he's better than Sam Darnold. I'm just saying I have confidence that you could win with him.
And you could take the training wheels off of him now in the way you couldn't when he started those 2 games back a couple of years ago for us against the Niners.
You could let him run it, let it rip. I think in this offense too. I was curious how he's going to look in this offense because he wasn't with the Broncos long enough to be with Kubiak a couple years back because he was part of the Russell Wilson trade. He'd never been in an offense like this, and I kind of wondered, is that gunslinger approach going to work on this? I've been very impressed since OTAs with the way that he's played and how he's handled his offense. He just looks like he's one of those guys. Just being here seems to bring out the best in him. He likes being here. I think the Seahawks have a good situation. If Sam Darnold, heaven forbid, that he gets hurt, you can put Drew Lock in.
And to kind of put that in perspective, if you think about the Michael Silver piece that he wrote 6 weeks ago or so, he talked to Sam Darnold. He talked about how that whole thing went down, and he related that if Sam Darnold had gone somewhere else, right? If Pittsburgh had been in on him, which they should have been, that was, or he had gone somewhere else early in the process, that the pivot for the Seahawks wasn't going to be that they really didn't have a lot of options, right? They thought about Aaron Rodgers, didn't want to deal with the waiting game, that it would have been Drew Lock. That we could be sitting here talking about Drew Lock, Jalen Milroe,
Yeah.
no Sam Darnold in that room, and that's what they were going to roll with. But now we get the extra layer, and it does give you a ton of confidence just to know that you have a guy that can come in and win games for you if you need it.
You also now don't have the push to get Milroe out there as the starter
Right.
now when he's not ready. And that's-
Exactly.
lets you get the plan.
You didn't pick him in the first round or even the second round. You picked him in the third. You don't have to do a Russell Wilson where you're just chucking him into the lineup. I mean, if he goes out and he did that, then so be it. But you have no reason to do that. Now, does that mean that he is going to not play at all? I still think we are going to see Jalen Milroe out there for a handful of plays every week. But
it'll be
especially
like
week one, I think they're going to want to do that.
It'll be RPO stuff, right? Though it'll be more of like highly, controlled kind of plays that you're setting, as opposed to going out there and playing.
I think you could see this. This is not based on anything I've seen in practice. We haven't seen anything. I mean, Mike McDonald is concealing that, but
A little bit yesterday.
just a tiny
little bit.
But I think where you see him is in the red zone. Mm-hmm. And I think that creates a major problem for opposing defenses because you have the advantage of your defense of the congestion, but oh no, now I got to deal with this guy's running a legitimate, and he's not a guy you're just running read option with. You can run quarterback power with him. He's a strong cat. You can run a lot of different stuff with him. They had issues with the short yardage game all of last year. Jalen Milroe could be a major ingredient to fixing that. That's where I think you see a lot of it.
Just needs a little more work on the jump pass.
Yeah,
Well,
let's check the jump passes out.
Let's
Enough
get
of
the
that.
jump pass. But one thing for me, Corbin, to your point about the goal line, when I saw the pick of Jalen Milroe and how this offense was going to work, the immediate thought for me was Cam Newton with D'Angelo Williams and Jonathan Stewart. When you have Charbonnet and K9 with him in that backfield in short yardage, you have a three-headed
I've
monster.
already been
back.
writing down plays with this. I'm
Yeah,
sure that you have.
and it was worked so well for Carolina those years. It was basically, okay, we're giving it to D'Angelo, we're going to give it to Jonathan Stewart, or is Cam going to keep it?
Yeah.
And the other thing about Cam, in that when you do congest down as a defense, it's not like Jalen can't throw the ball. He can throw it. So now you've added that aspect to it as well.
We kind of saw that yesterday. There were two sort of called rollouts in a row where he held onto the ball, and then on the third one he uncorked it deep. It's like I think I said something to you. It's like, yeah, there's going to be moments we're going to see it this season where he comes in, the defense thinks, okay, we got to stack the box. Here we go. We got to get our spy,
And then he's gonna take a
he's
shot
going to throw it
play.
deep.
Yeah.
Absolutely, because that's the strength of his game right now too. Is we saw it, as you said, the last play of the game yesterday. Like he's still, for all the work that needs to be done in the short, intermediate space, and we did see a step back yesterday. It kind of seemed like the muscle memory left him yesterday a little bit. Throwing it deep, he still looks really pretty.
Oh, this is what Hurts does at the Eagles, right? Where Hurts can't make every single throw in the book, but because he can make the 9-route throw really well, and that they've got the good rushing attack, which you tend to want to bring the resources up to deal with the rushing attack, but now you got one-on-ones on the outside.
You can mask some of those deficiencies.
Yeah.
And he's so fast. We saw Thursday. You and I were standing together Monday, I want to say, and he rolled out, and Emin Wari had him in the flat. Right, was chasing
If
him
you're
down and
outrunning,
didn't have a shot.
If you're outrunning
Nick Emin Wari didn't have a shot.
Who, as I said, the play he made on Charbonnet, I was just like, that's guys that size should not be running like that.
Yeah, I think your comment was any other quarterback in the league probably, save for one or two, and Emin Wari
Well,
runs
I
that
think
guy
Lamar
down. That's a
Jackson.
sack.
I mean, he's still Lamar is still the. He's still the guy. Dual threats.
We only have Corbin for a little bit longer, so I want to do this. If you want to ask, because I know we got a bunch, I'm not going to go back over all the comments, but if you have a specific question for Corbin, type Corbin and then your question, and we'll throw a couple questions his way. Thank you, Thomas Cox, for the super thanks. Comparing last year's offense to this year's offense is the play night and day, about the same or worse. Same with the O-line QB. So I think he's just asking for you to compare. Given everything we talked about in the offensive line, still some uncertainty at right guard, where would you compare this offensive group now to where they were last year on the eve of the mock game?
Oh God, they're so far ahead. I'm not even going to use night and day. We can go back to the multi-universe thing. We are in a different universe in terms of what I love. And Ken Walker III talked about this the other day. He's been told his entire career, we're going to emphasize the run game, but then they don't practice that way. That's not happening this year. They are getting after it, getting that run game going. They are backing up the words they had there. I love how Jake Bobo put it yesterday when I talked to him, that this offense, any receiver can thrive in it because of the way it's set up and the tags that they use and moving guys around and how the running game feeds into the stems all looking the same, and then they can have guys bust open. I see a purpose behind what they are doing. There's an intentionality to everything that they're doing, which I just never felt that last year. It just felt like, well, we're going to go to the game and we're going to do what we do. We're just going to sling it around. It's like, well, this isn't the Pac-12 after dark anymore. Like, you can't do that. And NFL defense is caught up very quickly to the predictability.
Don't you think and this is a little bit of an offshoot of this, but don't you think that there's also then a little bit of a logic to this in that, okay, the PR on this is that Geno and DK wanted out and that they were the ones that sort of were driving the train, but maybe there was some subtlety of the driving the train from the front office's background of this, of a want on their part to also move on.
I can't speak to sourcing on this. No sources have told me this, but I'm just telling you this based on a hunch. I think that Clint Kubiak came in and said, this isn't a great offense for DK Metcalf. Yeah. Because he wants to run a lot of those digs, the breaking in routes. Like, that's not DK's game. And I think Geno can make those throws. I don't think that was the case with Geno. I think Geno clearly wanted out. Geno wanted to play for Pete, is what it boiled down to. I think Clint Kubiak would have loved to work with Geno Smith. He would have been great with this offense. Yeah. But I think the receiver situation, I think DK Metcalf, who knows if they had conversations. I'm sure he talked to Kubiak, but I'm sure that it eventually reached a point where it's like, this isn't a good fit for me. And Clint Kubiak's like, I don't need you to run my offense. So, again, that's just a hunch for me, not sourcing anything, but I would not be surprised at all if that's what happened, because it really is not an offense that is catered well to. DK Metcalf can play in any offense, but I don't think his skill set that you are going to be maximizing it in this offense.
Agreed. And like going to Arthur Smith, where he's going to have, okay, we're going to run the ball, we'll bring in safety to the box, we'll get you one-on-ones on the outside.
And chuck it.
And that fits better to what he does, I think, a little bit on that.
Yep.
Where, without playing a preseason game even yet, how do you feel about the Seahawks and where they stack up in the division based on what you've seen these first couple of weeks?
Right now, I still think there's three teams. I can't buy the Arizona Cardinals. I just can't. I know there's a lot of people that are, and maybe this is the year that the Arizona Cardinals put it together. But until I see it happen, I just think there's still too many holes on that roster, and there's still a 5'4" quarterback. Like, it's true. I've seen him in the hall.
I never use these sound effects. I got to work.
He is like tiny.
They list him at 5'10", and like it's the opposite of Nick Eamon-Warry. I saw him in the hall and I'm like, double take, like that's Kyler Murray. Like, I'm 6 foot tall and I felt like Georgie Murasan standing near him. Like, no, I can't. Arizona's going to be competitive. I think every team in this division is going to be competitive. I think it's going to be a tough division as always. I just don't see Arizona being a threat to win it. I think the Rams, obviously, with all their pieces, the big question for me is always about Matthew Stafford's health. That's what I'm going to be watching with them. Can their defense pick up where they left off last year, because they've still got some holes there. The 49ers are really the wild card because their wide receiver depth is terrible right now. I don't know who Brock Purdy's throwing to away from his tight ends. Juwan Jennings, obviously, if he's there, but he's demanding to be traded. There's all kinds of stuff going on there. They've got all these older players. Can you keep them on the field? If they can, San Francisco will be good, but that's a big if to me. I think Seattle is the best equipped, if you're doing odds right now, to win this division because they've got youth, they've got an elite defense, they have money to go get better. Like, there's still room to go get some guys to add to this team. And I just think the offense, they're not going to be a top 5 scoring offense, but they don't need to be. I think they are going to be much more efficient. They're going to be much better in the red zone, and they are going to play more to having that elite defense by running the football.
Yeah, we talked about that last night. If they can start getting leads, that's just something we haven't seen in the last few years. You know, especially early in games. Yeah, sustained drives. You know, burn up the clock a little bit, start games with a good drive. We just haven't seen that in a while, and the advantage that gives a defense and a guy like Mike McDonald to get into his bag.
Ideal for the stadium, too, to play this type of ball.
This is especially when you start having the raindrops hitting your helmet. You got to be able to play that style.
Well, Bryce, a former quarterback, it's like, what's the difference between throwing in, down south in Miami, and then you have a cold day in November with a little bit of frost, and then the wind and the rain going a little bit sideways. We saw that Cardinal game last year at home where it felt almost impossible.
And you have a quarterback that has shown he can throw in those elements. I mean, Sam Darnold did that for the Vikings last year. He looked very comfortable throwing in the rain.
He did it here. He killed us in that 4-minute point with Jefferson.
So if you can carry that over, that's the X factor with Sam Darnold. Because if he is going to play consistently like that in this weather, that's a huge development for the Seattle Seahawks passing game.
Well, we've seen it with quarterbacks. That was Russell's kind of problem with him. Remember how bad he was in the rain? If it got I don't know, you couldn't explain, but some quarterbacks just don't do well in those environments.
Which
Some
you would
do.
have thought he would have been because he had those massive mids, you know, that you think that
Sam
would have.
Darnold has a pretty good track record of playing in those kind of elements. So, I mean, every time that he came to Seattle, even when he was with Carolina, it played well. And
I want to say that was a rainy game in Carolina.
It was.
Yeah, it was. Threw a couple touchdowns. I remember that.
Yep, he likes the rain apparently. So
Got a question about JSN. Is he looked like a wide receiver one? And my first thought when I saw the question was, he's at a really interesting camp because he's just not getting any buzz. No one's really talking about him. But to me, that speaks to how good he's been. He just silently goes out there every day and looks the part.
I think he's looked like a top 10 receiver in the
And playing
NFL.
a lot more outside, we're seeing, right?
But I was making this argument to you back in March when people were talking about his fit in Kubiak's offense. Like, just go back to that Rams game in Week 9. He didn't play a lot in the boundary, but he murdered them when he was out there. They could not defend him, and he should have had 240 receiving yards in that game. And a huge chunk of that came from working outside. No, they're like, well, he's only a 4.5 guy. I'm like, he wasn't fully healthy when he
look.
He is a legitimate 4.4
When you
guy
watch him,
with
you never
99
think
percentile
if he was a little
quickness.
quicker. You just never think that when you're watching him.
And the other thing with this offense, the condensed splits that you're going to see him do, where he's going to be lined up closer, and the movement you're going to see with the motion that we even saw yesterday, it doesn't matter really where you line JSN up in this offense. He's going to have havoc created by what he does, because you have Cooper Kupp, who knows this offense inside and out with his connection to Jake Peets, what he did in LA. JSN can feed off of that, and I would say you almost have a 1A, 1B kind of situation with Kupp if he stays healthy and looks the way he does. And JSN, I don't know if you're going to have such a big deal on who receiver one is. I think you have two guys who are going to be vital in this offense.
I think JSN is clearly receiver one, though. Like, he looks like a top 10 guy out there, like in the league. Yeah, he is having a great year. So,
how about the defense? Are they top 5 is the question. Are they a top 5 defense in the league?
if they're not, it was a huge disappointment.
Yeah.
I think, I'm going to say this right now, it would be the one thing that could stop that from happening is, of course, the injury bug. And so you hope you can keep your team healthy. But even if they have some injuries, like I just love the depth that they have. Other than, I will say this, you know, Mike Morris and Jared Ivey maybe can change this. I think the interior, getting one more big body in there, especially if Jonathan Hankins isn't ready for the start of the season, is going to be crucial. And then the off-ball linebacker depth behind the top two guys. That's the area that I would say that they are easily the thinnest. So, but I think it would be a big disappointment if this is not a top 5 scoring defense.
What do you look for tonight before we let you go here? What are you hearing about how the practice is going to be conducted? Because I know a lot of people are disappointed, myself included, but I talked to a lot of fans that because when Pete started doing this, he called it a mock game, and they used game-type conditions.
And they won't be doing
it.
that.
It was just a practice last year. Is it going to be the same tonight?
Yeah, you're going to get it sounded like from what Mike McDonald was telling us that there's going to be more. It's going to be more 11 on 11 like a game.
Okay,
but they're going to be doing.
We heard some of that yesterday. Might be more scrimmaging.
He said less group stuff and more 11 on 11.
Cool.
But they're not going to be having like first quarter, second quarter. Like it's going to be situational stuff. But it sounds like you're going to see more plays than you saw last year.
Have they given you any indication yet as far as how much, or if at all, we might see the starters on Thursday?
I would say right now you're probably not going to see much. We haven't had anything that's been disclosed to us, but I'd be surprised. I know a lot of people are like, well, Sam Darnold being a new QB or whatever. Like, he's been around Kubiak before, though. I don't think you might see one series, but I honestly, if I had to predict, I don't expect to see
Lots of
starters.
Milrow.
I expect Jalen Milrow is going to be playing a lot in these preseason games, and I think you'll see a decent chunk of Drew Lock.
You're going to be Mr. August. Isn't that what they used to call Matt Hasselbeck back in the day?
Mr. August.
Yep. Corbin Smith, Emerald City Spectrum. If you haven't checked it out yet, it's the best website out there. Covers all the Northwest sports. And Locked On Seahawks, of course, right?
Yep, 5 days a week. Season at 6, so yeah.
Awesome. We're going to say goodbye to him. Let's send him out the right way. There we go. Appreciate you being here, Corbin.
Always.
Thanks.
It was
Good chopping up
great
with
to chill with you guys.
We'll see you out there. Good to see you as always.
And now
Hardest working man.
I will give way to your guys' feature guest here.
Let's go, man.
I would like to introduce now. Tough one to follow here, but I have faith. Managing editor of Fieldgulls, Mookie Alexander, ladies and gentlemen. Here we go.
for whatever reason, I see some tomatoes being prepped for throwing at me
Put 'em down.
in the
Put 'em
audience.
down.
So I'm begging you to please put them down until I speak.
I missed a great opportunity when I introduced him. I should have used this one. Mookie, how are you?
I'm doing all right, and while I've been on the side here, first of all, I just want to shout out, we do actually have a couple of people who have been podcast followers who have come down to Fast Fashion Brewery here, and one of them is wearing a throwback Joey Galloway Seahawks uni.
Oh, I
And-
thought that's Joey Galloway?
Oh, that gets going hard, man.
Yeah,
goes hard.
absolutely. In fact, I just seen that the Seahawks are going to be doing another throwback Sunday night against the Commanders. But I don't know if it's the white throwbacks or if it's going to be the soup. I think I saw it might have been maybe they
Because the Commanders are one of those teams that go white at home sometimes, aren't they?
Yeah, but I think it could also be the Super Bowl uniforms. So the Super Bowl 48 win, that could be another throwback. Yes.
Okay. As long as it's not the Super Bowl 49 uniform.
Yeah. Let's not get it mixed up. man.
I have no idea what you're talking about.
Let's not create the right. We got to create the right vibes.
It's like the 13th floor in hotels, right? It just
Doesn't
doesn't
exist.
exist.
We do not speak of such horrific things, but I tell you what, funny story. Last night, you and I were out staying late because we were, you and Bryce were doing the kind of the test run, just our recap of Friday's practice. And as Bryce and I left, I said, I don't think the Mariners have a walk-off in them tonight. And I said that to you, Dan. And literally 5 minutes later, after I left here and went back to get my car, get back to the hotel, or get into Bryce's car actually, JP hits the
JP
walk-off.
went deep.
So
Yep.
while you've been talking with Corbin,
Hey, they'd come back to tie it up.
2-0 to 2-2. Although unfortunately, Big Dumper struck out looking with the bases loaded, so that was a big missed opportunity. But if we go crazy over these next however many minutes because they're in the bottom of the eighth and it's 2-2,
That'll
you will
be
know
why.
why.
Suarez is about to put one out there, poke one out in left field there.
I mean, it's got to happen this weekend, right? He's got to hit a winner. And to Mike, I will say this though: when you said that last night, I said, "Hey, we got Cole Young coming up. We got a chance." I was off by a player,
Didn't even need to get to
but
Cole.
didn't even need to get to Cole. No, we got who was it? Canzone got on, and then JP hit the rope. Anything that you heard us in that first hour that stood out from some of Corbin's insights?
Certainly a lot about the offensive line. The cable do bit was a little bit surprising, but it is still
Because
first couple of
we
weeks
saw
of
some
training
things
camp,
we
right?
liked from him.
Yeah.
Yeah, but once we get into real game action, I'm going to be a lot more tuned in on how this offensive line is going to perform, and particularly the lineups, because you just mentioned at the end before Corbin left, are we going to see much of the starters in preseason? Well, we still have some competitions going on that may involve some starters getting some snaps. So depending on what happens in this practice tonight, and then with the Raiders game, like if we start to see Bradford and Haynes become Bradford's not playing, I think that almost feels like whoever's
Right.
playing less as the preseason progresses is more likely to be the starter.
I guess the good news is they just have so damn many guys in the competition that you can afford to be a little aggressive with how much you play them in the preseason, because some of those decisions might just make themselves.
And then certainly all the Micah Parsons talk. Ultimately, I think that the Cowboys will get something done. Jerry Jones, and great Jerry impressions by everybody, by the way. We were trending very close to Yosemite Sam briefly, but as far as I'm concerned, great impressions.
I was doing the South Park peanut gallery.
Yeah.
I wasn't even doing it. It's just that's what Jerry sounds like.
Yeah, so with Micah Parsons and whether or not he would come to Seattle and whether Seattle should trade for him, I can understand why Seattle wouldn't trade for him or maybe shouldn't trade for him. But if one of the reasons is, well, we have Boye Mafe and Derek Hall, no disrespect to Mafe or Hall. However, Mafe and Hall, I think, are very good players, and maybe at least one of them could be great. But Micah Parsons already is a great player. And with Mafe, the other aspect of this is, unlike Hall, Mafe could be gone as a free agent. So you don't want to pass up that opportunity. If the opportunity presents itself and the price is right, then, yeah, I wouldn't complain if they got Micah Parsons, getting one of the top defensive players in the league. And then when you look at the Seahawks edge rushing group, what we didn't really address is, what does Chenna Nwosu's future look like?
Yeah,
Because-
I think we all expected to show up for training camp this year and see him out there. I mean, they made it sound like it was an easy cleanup. John Schneider said it before the draft. It's just a routine thing. We're not worried about it. he's not even out on the field doing work. And we're even seeing Riley Mills off to the side doing some work coming off an ACL. Jenna's not doing anything. And it's concerning. And then the way that McDonald's talking about him, it just, he can't even put his finger on it. It reminds me of when Abe first got hurt and they didn't know what was happening.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and without getting too deep into any inside information, because I think the four of us have, and Corbin certainly, have probably known about this for a good while, but I think that the Seahawks have been sniffing around for a top-line edge rusher. In other words, good may not be good enough for Mike McDonald's unit. And you look at all the top defenses in the league, you're going to have, even if it's not necessarily an edge rusher, you could have, like Chris Jones, be somebody who can play out of the edge, but he's also just an absolute unblockable force in the interior.
Yeah.
You have that one guy who you have to pay so much attention to. And for Seattle, they don't really have that out of the edge. Now, if you trade for Micah Parsons, hypothetically, don't care what the compensation is, just pretend that Micah is in Seattle, and you got to deal with Micah Parsons and Leonard Williams, and you haven't even gotten to the potential year 2 leap for Byron Murphy, for example,
Sure.
or a year 3 leap for Derek Hall, because Derek Hall made significant strides in his second season as a pass rusher, finishing his place, because he had no sacks his first year, and then he ends up with, 8 in his second season? So, yeah, I think that, I want the Seahawks' future to be offense-driven in the sense that it's still an offense-first league, and that it's hard to win championships or compete for championships if your offense isn't great. But the Seahawks defense has potential right now, without any trades, to be a top 5, 7-ish unit. And you add Micah Parsons into the mix, even if you're giving up one of your edge rushers, then the sky really is the limit for this group with all of the acquisitions they made, in addition to the fact that who are their major losses from last season? Draymond Jones as a cap casualty, Roy Robertson-Harris, another cap casualty, was a midseason trade. But you've got your secondary, and you've added Nick Emenwari. Linebacker could use some extra depth. I mean, off-ball linebacker, but Ernest Jones and Tyrus Knight figure to be your starters. And then on the edges, it's Mafe and Hall for now, but on the interior, you got Murphy, you've got Leonard Williams, you got Jaron Reed. There is a lot of talent on the defensive side of the ball, and I feel like for Seahawks fans, a lot of the optimism regarding this season is not necessarily that the offense should be better this year with a new coaching staff and some new faces, and it's that the defense raises the floor for this team. And I feel like with Parsons, you're talking about raising the ceiling versus raising the floor.
Yeah, I did want to just put this back up. Have you guys seen this tweet?
Oh, yeah.
This is from last year. Yeah, somebody recycled it today, so I thought I would just throw it back up there. Maybe it'll be a tweet come true. Right?
Well, just to touch on, too, with him and the Mafe thing, which is a good point on this, being that Mafe goes out this year, has 11 sacks, let's say, good run defense. And now you're in the position of, we could do the contract extension. Do we want to go George Karlaftis money? Well, okay, we want to go franchise tag, but the franchise tag for edges is pretty rich.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And so then you are at a point of realistically going, we don't want to do either of those two. So now maybe you're just letting him walk, and we may not even be able to play the compensatory game because you're top 7 in cap space right now. So you're probably going to sign free agents on the offset of it at that point if you let him go for nothing. And maybe that's a little bit of, not a big driver of this, but a cherry on top on driving a little bit of the motivation of the team.
So I've got a question for you guys on this whole situation, and the hesitancy we've seen through all of our different channels and stuff about going and trading for Micah Parsons. Do you think that is a byproduct of John Schneider's history of taking swings on big players and it not panning out? Harvin, Jimmy Graham, and Jimmy Graham did pan out to an extent. He was a decent player when he was here. And obviously Sheldon Richardson,
our
Jamal
leading tight
Adams.
end in receptions in all time.
But when you look at what happened offensive line-wise with getting rid of Max Unger, it created a lot of issues here, right? We've never been able to fix it since. But then you look, Sheldon Richardson, you look at then Jamal Adams. Like all these trades that have been made for a big-time player haven't worked out. Clowney's another one, right? The only
Clowney worked out, though. Clowney was a good
But he's just a 1 year.
1 year. Same with Sheldon Richardson was just the 1 year. The one I would really say if he made a big trade that actually did help and actually you re-signed that player was Dwayne Brown. Dwayne Brown was
and Leo.
Leo now. But realistically, so we're talking 2 out of 7 trades he's made for. It's not exactly a great average on them panning out. So that's where I think the hesitancy comes from of again making another big acquisition that we think is going to raise, as Mookie said, the ceiling of this defense. How do you guys all feel about that, knowing the history and knowing how it's gone overall for Seattle?
Oh, I think 90%, in my opinion, of fans' trepidation in making this move is Jamal Adams and how that turned out and what we gave up for it. I think it's recency bias. I think it's just, and people do, we're all such big fans now, and by we, I mean just fans, right? Of the draft and that process and everything else, and we just fall in love with the allure of young prospects and all the ceiling and the upside and everything. We don't want to give that up, but I just keep going back to this. I get more pragmatic the older I get. The Rams gave up 4 years of first round picks and won a Super Bowl at the end of it. Like it just, all that matters is the 53 players you have on your roster at any given time, and it's just a matter of each offseason figuring out how you're going to get to the next 53. And there's so many tools available and so many ways you can be creative in managing the cap now that I just don't worry about that stuff anymore. Get the best players. The late, great John Clayton used to always say the NFL is a talent acquisition league, and the teams that acquire the most talent usually win, and that's all that matters.
Oh, and don't forget about the Rams' second and third that they gave up for Von Miller in addition for the half a season of Von Miller there. You cannot do a one-size...
There's a reason they're so good at third-round picks, and it's because that's all they've had for the last
10. They've had to. It's by necessity. You can't put a one-size-fits-all on this when it comes to these past trades. You look at each individual one and why they failed and unpack that, and then see if there's a connection between why they failed on them. Mm-hmm. I don't think you can do that with all of them. Harvin had character issues and background problems coming out of Minnesota that you were well aware of, that you signed up for on that. With Jimmy Graham, you turned him into an inline tight end when he played a slot out at New Orleans. When you got Jamal Adams, at first you blitzed him at twice the rate that he had been blitzed at with the Jets in the first year to try to get the most out of him, and then you turned him to a cover 2 safety. So you're not going to do this, number one, with Parsons. You're going to maximize him and utilize him in all the right ways, and he is a far superior player to any of those three guys, in my opinion, even Jimmy Graham.
There's been a lot of buzz the last week or so about Kayvon Thibodeau potentially being a target, too. It makes sense that the Giants might want to move him. They're pretty loaded there, with Abdul Carter looking every bit like the prospect that we thought he was going to be in training camp, and then they obviously made the big move last year for Brian Burns. Would he be a fit? How would you guys feel about potentially Thibodeau? He does have... He's in the 4th year of his deal, right?
Yes.
So he has the 5th year option still available. Okay.
Did they activate the 5th year option? They have to activate it by now if he's going to...
You're right.
I believe they did.
I'll work on that while you guys answer. Discuss amongst yourselves.
Yeah, there's something about Thibodeau that is just lacking to me in terms of being that upper echelon pass rusher, whereas with Parsons, he's just a different beast altogether. And the fact that they even drafted Abdul Carter
says a lot.
It says a lot about how they feel about Thibodeau in the long run. So I can understand the idea of speculating Thibodeau to Seattle, but if you gave me the option, I'd rather take the more expensive but proven option in Micah Parsons. Whereas with Thibodeau, you don't know whether or not the Giants are really actively shopping him. He could be somebody who potentially is actually a midseason.
They did pick up his 5th year option.
So
He's
that's
under
all the more
contract
reason.
next year.
Yeah.
So you'd have him in baseball terms, he's controllable for another year and a half.
Unless he wants a contract extension after this year if he does well.
Right.
And you got to think, too, they have Abdul Carter, and they also have Brian Burns there, too. Right?
Yes.
Like, Thibodeau isn't the other piece to Abdul Carter. It really is Burns and Carter.
Guy named Dexter Lawrence on the inside.
And
It's not too
he's
bad
on the
either.
inside, too. So, like, that's where I think if you struck out trying to get Parsons, Thibodeau might be that. If you need to still address it and want to go get somebody, he now becomes your kind of consolation acquisition in a way. You're probably not giving up the same capital. Like we all talked about it last night. And when you mentioned Bradley Chubb on the show, Dan, and kind of the acquisition of trade that they used for that, I look at this more as Khalil Mack. This, to me, if you're going after Parsons, it is a Khalil Mack from Oakland to Chicago. You're giving up a couple first, you're giving up a mid, and you're giving up a player like Brandon's point. It's probably a Mafe or a Hall. You're giving up, but you might be able to lower that cost a little bit with a Mafe or a Hall because they are still a young player with the allure of them still ascending to another level potentially.
Yeah, and then getting back to the history of the big trades with John Schneider. So I think contextually, where is the roster right now? That always has to matter when you look at the context of those trades. So with Percy Harvin, the Seahawks probably needed another, well, they felt, a game-breaking receiver, another weapon on offense because, you had Rice and Baldwin, but Kurtz hadn't really broken out yet. He was just signed to the practice squad.
Don't forget about Golden Tate.
Yes, and Golden Tate, of course. But they needed that little extra something special on offense, and unfortunately it didn't work out with Harvin up until the Super Bowl, in which case it worked out brilliantly for one game.
Yeah.
But then you get to the Jimmy Graham trade. First team in NFL history to have 0 targets to tight ends in a Super Bowl. So, and also that was a year that, due to Paul Richardson's injury, every receiver on the Seahawks, on the active roster at the time, was undrafted. They clearly needed somebody else. And also, Graham would be that big body target over the middle for Russell Wilson to throw to.
Was supposed to be, yeah.
We know Russ's history with throwing over the middle of the field, but he did it with Jimmy Graham. So, didn't quite work out, but a lot of it was injury related, and the other part of it was the utilization of him as a more traditional tight end, as opposed to more like a big-bodied receiver that the Saints were able to do in a more pass-heavy offense. The Jamal Adams trade really, I think, is the crux of it, because 2 first-round picks for a safety, never been done before, and then he also gave up a 4th rounder or a 3rd rounder, I think.
And a player, who at the time was a pretty solid player.
Yeah, and Bradley McDougall.
Yeah.
But the problem for the Seahawks with the Adams trade was the defense as a whole was already not good. Like with Jimmy Graham, he went into a good offense, and with Percy Harvin, he was going into a good offense. Jamal Adams was going into a defense that was one of the worst in the league, and they also had issues with pass rushing. So outside of Jadeveon Clowney in the 2019 season, can anybody remember, like, who was next? Rasheem Green in terms of pass rushing prowess?
That's a pull.
Well, 2019 might have been the dreaded Ziggy Ansah year as well.
Oh, it was.
Ooh.
Yeah. So, 2019.
The count outrunning him on a blown hamstring.
Yeah.
So now you get to 2020.
Brandon, why?
Yeah. So I'm sorry we're dredging up old wounds here. You're lucky. You're lucky that we're in the bottom of the ninth.
Just start throwing out names of disappointing former Seahawks.
You're lucky.
Literally a fork coming out of his back, just like going like this as he's running.
You're lucky we're in the bottom of the ninth and the game is still tied, because I didn't want to mention what Dylan Moore did at the top of the ninth. That was he basically dropped a guaranteed 3rd out.
He almost Konsenko'd it.
Yes. So, well, luckily the Rangers had a 3rd out anyway. But anyway, 2020, the Seahawks had legitimate issues with their secondary and legitimate issues with their pass rush. And I felt that Carroll and Schneider, and maybe more so Pete, believed that Adams' versatility meant that he could solve both things, where he could be that movable chess piece in the secondary, and he could be that guy that he is just a supreme blitzer and he can get after the quarterback. Well, the problem for the Seahawks is they still have major edge rushing issues, and for all the sacks that Jamal Adams got, the secondary was just getting shredded. And some of it was Jabal, but not all of it. But he didn't fix anything. So the Seahawks were looking for win-now moves with rosters that still had significant flaws. And with Micah Parsons, I can understand the argument for not wanting to trade for him, because this might not be a win-now roster. Certainly on the offensive side of the ball, there's still a lot of experimentation. There might be some growing pains with all of the turnover, both with the coaching staff and the roster. The defense, I actually think, can be championship caliber. So that's kind of the balance that you have to strike. So for the people who don't want to trade for Micah Parsons, I think that the number one reason would be for 2025, he might not help the Seahawks get over the top of the Super Bowl. But if the Seahawks have an offense that is even top 12, top 13 with the expectation that they're going to keep ascending, then your ceiling can raise with a guy like Micah Parsons.
Just as a reminder, too, I wanted to pull it up to remind myself, but this is initially what the Bears got back for Khalil Mack in 2018. It was 2 firsts, a 3rd, and a 6th for Mack, a 2nd, and a conditional 5th.
Mm-hmm. And it has to be said, though, that the Bears never won a playoff game. They made it to 2 postseasons, but why did they only ever make 2 postseasons and not win a playoff game either time? They had Mitch Trubisky as their quarterback, and the offense was just your typical junky Bears offense. So with the Seahawks, this offense is not the Bears offense. At least we don't hope for it to be. So the quarterback situation, I think, opens things up in terms of who you could trade for or who you could still look to acquire on either side of the ball, really. With Sam Darnold, he could be still your franchise quarterback if everything pans out and Minnesota wasn't a one-year fluky 2012 or 2013 Nick Foles run. Then you've got your guy for the next few seasons. If he doesn't pan out, then you still pivot to Jalen Milroe and you try to maximize Jalen Milroe on a rookie deal. Both quarterback contracts are very advantageous, in fact.
Yeah.
You could get out of the Darnold deal after 1 season if things don't work out. And then with Milroe, you've got 4 years of team control at a pretty low cost because he's a 3rd-round pick. So all of those things you have to consider. I don't think that we should be constantly looking at, we tend to be homers when it comes to the state of the roster and go,
sure,
yeah, we don't need that established great player. We have these guys at home. We don't have.
Yeah, we get
don't-
emotionally attached.
Yeah, we don't
Right.
need Micah Parsons. We have Micah Parsons at home, and then it's just a fusion of Boye Mafe and Derek Hall. But I look at a team like the Washington Commanders, and they're trying to make big swings trade for Deebo Samuel. Now that's also interesting. Terry McLaurin asking for a trade request, and we have people in our Fieldgulls comments going, "Hey, maybe they can trade for Terry." Well, that situation is different because Terry is a very good receiver. He's probably not at the same ranking relative to Micah Parsons as an edge rusher, but not only are you trading for him, you're not going to give him multiple first-round picks, but he is older, and he would need a contract extension, and that contract extension would be possibly more than DK Metcalf's
Right.
that he got in Pittsburgh.
Yeah.
So from a Seahawks perspective, you didn't pay DK. Why would you pay Terry McLaurin, as good as he is, an older player, more money, especially given the players that you have on the roster? So, yeah, we're
And you're going to pay JSN next year.
and you're going to pay JSN next year.
Right.
So I get it. There are a lot of players
Yeah.
within the last few draft classes the Seahawks have to consider paying or inevitably extend. But you're in a favorable cap situation right now, and fans got to remember the cap, unless something catastrophic happens, like COVID, for example, the cap continues to rise. So today's price is not tomorrow's price. And the percentage of the cap that they have now is not the percentage of the cap that they're going to have next season. So you don't want to freak out over the money necessarily as much as the percentage of the cap that they're commanding.
I want to go around the table asking you guys this. So we've talked a lot about Micah Parsons. We talked a lot over the last couple of months, all of us have, about Trey Hendrickson, right? And before he signed his extension, maybe we even considered the possibility of TJ Watt. If none of those things occur, right? If Micah Parsons stays in Dallas or the Seahawks just don't make the move, yes or no on Jadeveon Clowney? You heard Corbin mention him before. I didn't think at the beginning of the offseason he was a fit because I thought after they signed Lawrence that the skill sets were a little bit redundant there. But now just because of just bodies, right? And the fit with McDonald and everything else and how he wants to defend the run, would you be in or out on Clowney?
I'd be in on Clowney. I think you need to add that extra piece to a rotation that you still need to have as a proven thing. You don't know what you're going to get with Chenna when he comes back. We're all hoping Chenna's still the player he was, but you're talking about a leg injury to a guy that uses his legs the majority of the time for leverage and to be able to power through offensive tackles and things. I think Jadeveon Clowney makes a lot of sense now. You don't know how long you're going to get Lawrence either. He's had some injury history problems too. Then you're back to Hall and Mafe, and then outside of that, we're talking about Jared Ivey. We're talking about Mike Morris as the next guys that you'd have to rely on to step up. We've seen what happens to this defense when all of a sudden you miss one or two guys on that edge. The defense falls apart. The pressure, dissipates, and we struggle with the fact that, we've got these great guys covering in the back end, but they can't cover for 7 seconds because a quarterback can sit back there all day.
Yeah.
I'm a complete yes. I'm a super Jadeveon homer. When you look at the Mike McDonald defense, he doesn't just align his edges up as wide 9s to the far outside shoulder. I call it wide 10. You go out an extra yard. And he does this, really this is why the power edge works so well, because he's giving those power edges an extra step of build-up speed to then go at that tackle. And Jadeveon's so long, and he creates such explosive power when you give him those 3 steps until contact, that he just forces the tackle into the backfield, blows up the play, doesn't even have to make the play in this defense. That's what he did with Baltimore. He's just havoc. That's all he creates when he goes there. So that's why he had his best year in this defense in his career. He's been at 5 or 6 different spots. He had his best season with the Baltimore Ravens that year because Mike McDonald said, I know just how to use this guy. I don't need you with pass rush moves. I don't need you with a rip move and the swim and all this. You just go be big and bad and you go down the barrel of it. And they're trying to do this with Hall and he can kind of do it. But this is why you brought in Lawrence. This is why I think there's still more room to bring on, have 2 guys on either side that can do this because the power edges is where a lot of this defense starts. Lawrence one side, Clowney the other, and then you relieve Hall from having to have the run defending duties. Let him go crazy as a pass rusher at that point.
Yeah, when I think about Derek Hall as a rookie, I can't remember who was injured, but they didn't trust Derek Hall to really set an edge or do anything in run defense, such that they brought back Frank Clark, and that was a very unhappy reunion, and that they had to pull the plug pretty early. I think Hall has improved. He's finishing his plays a lot better as a pass rusher, but run defense is still an area where Mafe is superior. And so for Jadeveon Clowney, as heavily hyped as he was as a number 1 overall pick, I don't think he's met those expectations, but it's kind of like Reggie Bush as the number 2 overall pick in 2005, where good player, no chance of being in the Hall of Fame, but he can still contribute to your team in a positive way. He just didn't meet his lofty expectations as a high draft pick. So with Clowney, I think it would be a low-cost move, the fact that he's still available in August. But the one area where I would caution about Clowney is he's got his own injury history. We're talking about the injury history of DeMarcus Lawrence and the fact that he missed so much time with a foot injury. Clowney has had a litany of injuries, including the 1 year he's in Seattle. He missed a few games then. Now, if I remember correctly, he actually played all 17 when he was with the Baltimore Ravens. So if you sign Clowney, then again, it would probably have to be something above the veteran minimum, but we're not breaking the bank here. But if you want to play him, I don't know, 20, 25 snaps a game, where he may be defending the run more than going after the quarterback, because he's always had an interesting history there where he can get pressures, but he can't finish the quarterback. He can't sack the quarterback. Then I'm not the biggest Clowney fan historically, but I'm not going to be upset if they sign him, because he's got the familiarity of working in McDonald's defense, and he's got a lot of talented guys in the primes of their career who can kind of take the responsibilities off of him, because in 2019, Clowney had so much put on his shoulders because there just wasn't another good edge rusher on the team. And even in the interior, you had Jaron Reed, but the depth was just not good. So a different situation if Clowney is brought back this year.
He would just feel like a safety blanket to me. Like, I would stop worrying as much about the edge. To me, of all the position groups, that's the one I feel like is the shortest right now. One other position group, though, that I know caused a lot of consternation over the offseason among fans, and maybe still does. And Corbin touched on one thing while he was sitting there, and I wanted to get into it a little deeper with him. But let me ask you guys, based on what you and I saw the last 2 days and the rest of us saw yesterday, I think we all felt pretty good about Quinton Bohanna and Brandon Peely. Like, that's a nice little battle there.
Yeah, no, I think Quinton Bohanna and Peely are definitely guys that you can look to help fill, I guess, that nose tackle role until you find a more solid solution. Because, yes, I get Jonathan Hankins is coming back. We don't know when. But I think you can use both of them in their different skill sets, because they do have similar ones, but I think Peely might be the better athlete in some respects. We saw him move quite well. He got a sack yesterday, even though I don't know they give him credit for it.
Right.
But if you're looking for your nose tackle, like, you kind of are almost going to have to create him in the aggregate, almost, in a way, it seems, with this team. Unless they're able to find somebody through the end of cutdowns and everything to bring in that can actually make that impact, because otherwise you're banking on Jonathan Hankins again. But if you can limit his snap count, you might be okay.
Some of it's going to be based upon how much of their intentionality is to put Jaron Reed the nose this year and then slap Byron over the 3-tech. Because if you do that, this really reduces down these two guys and what you need from them, unless Hankins is just that injured with it. I'm still looking to cut down day. I like how these guys have looked, but if there's a legitimate guy out there that we can get, who can plug up, take on two blockers, get the job done, won't cost a lot because it'll be a cut candidate, I'd be looking really mainly to that. I think we've been over these two guys and how good they've looked, because we've had guys in the past, feels like, in nose tackle wise, that have looked good in training camp, and then you get them in there and they can still kind of get pushed around when it comes to games.
Yeah, I noticed a lot of good things from Peely. We had a mini scare when Peely came up lame, and he was limping around with a foot
right after making a play.
After making a play, but thankfully he came back in the game. Came back into practice. There was no game. But I think that Peely has got a shot to make the roster. And with Riley Mills probably going to start the season on the NFI list, I feel like they might just roster an extra nose tackle, just have a big body on the defensive line, because, as you guys have said, not a lot of great depth there, and we already know that Hankins is on PUP. He's probably going to come back during preseason, but to the extent to which he'll play, if at all in preseason, we don't know. And he's still, 35 years old, so he's not going to have a major workload or anything. You would at least you wouldn't expect him to. So, I think that Bohanna could be back on the practice squad, because that's where he spent most of last season, and then they gave him a couple of activations. But Peely has NFL game experience too. I think he had a few games with the Dolphins, not a ton of defensive snaps.
He's got a really cool background. At USC, he was a true, early in his career, he was a big-time recruit. He was like a 335-pound, 340-pound nose tackle. Either blew his ACL or a patella tendon, had a serious knee injury. Got down to 310, 315, changed his game, became quicker, kind of showed a little bit more juice coming off the injury, a little bit more of a pass rush skill set. But now it's like he's 3-4 years removed from the injury. Now he's put the weight back on. And you can see the athleticism. Somebody asked McDonald about him last week after practice, and he kind of lit up a little bit. And I feel like the more we get to know Mike McDonald, his poker face isn't always the best. When you ask him about players, like with Pete, he got to the point where you didn't know if he could tell you he loved a guy and then cut him the next day. McDonald's, like, if you catch him off guard, if you just throw a name out, you're like, Brandon Peely. And he's like, he might catch himself and try to reel it back in, but he said, look, he's really athletic, and those guys are hard to find. But I also feel like that's, to your point, that's a position that teams don't roster deeply. They'll carry 3-4 in the preseason, and then they'll shave it down to 2 because it's such a limited, rotational role that there's going to be a lot to sift through. I feel like on that.
It's hard
cut
to
down.
predict on this one for sure.
Yeah. But also, it's not. It's just not. It's not a huge role in this defense. Like there's. I have so many people tell me they're really, really concerned about Byron Murphy having to play so much nose tackle, and yet he played 14% of his snaps at nose last year. It wasn't like he was out there full time.
Well, that's the 14% is a zero technique,
Yeah.
by the way PFF counts it. So they're not showing, PFF doesn't identify the one tech when you're slapped between the guard and the center, and that's where he was living last year. That's at 80 to 85% of his snaps were in that position based on what because I've gone through all of his film multiple times over on the 22. That's where he was at.
Yeah.
So it's true. He was a little bit on that, but I wish PFF would actually identify that because it would give us a better understanding of these guys, especially the guys that are kind of tweener types, of how much they actually truly can play nose tackle versus being more 3 techs.
Yeah.
In Baltimore, Mike McDonald's big nose was not Arthur Jones. I'm trying to remember his name.
Michael Pierce.
Michael
Jones.
Jones.
He had 2 guys. Yeah, then there was a younger guy that was his backup.
Travis Jones. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, there we go. Arthur Jones was way back
Yeah,
in the
Travis
Super
Jones is a
Bowl
free
year.
agent next year, by the way.
Yes.
Just a side note, Michael
love-
Pierce retired this offseason. I think.
Yes, when you have that interception against Cleveland and then decide I'm not going to even try to go for a pick 6, I'm just going to rest here, then you know it's time to call it a day. That's your career highlight right there. But yeah, I think great Matty F. Brown, way back when McDonald was hired, noted that the average weight on the interior for Baltimore was probably above league average and larger and heavier than the Seahawks under Pete. So I think that they're still looking for that big body, and Peely could still fit that role. But I like to think McDonald's not incredibly inflexible with this system. He is going to adapt on the fly. If he doesn't have something here, then he'll just make up for it some other position.
Looks like the Mariners are going to drop this one. Damn it. Or set us up for another dramatic win.
Yeah.
Let me go around the table again. Tonight at Lumen Field, if a lot of fans are going to be there for the first time, haven't gone to any practice, haven't seen this team up close, what should they be looking for? What would you tell a fan that hasn't seen this team practice yet these first 2 weeks? Watch for this. Either it could be a player, a concept.
I would say watch how often this passing a game attacks the middle of the field now, and how much
I like that
they
one.
like to attack inside the hashes, and the way that they condense their formations with their receivers. I think that's definitely something to watch.
2 quick things for me. The Emawari, I think Corbin talking about him, that was not empty smoke on his part. He has been this impressive, and I don't think he would have been talking like him unless it has been just this good. He's going to, I think, probably flash again on the field tonight. A little bit of an offshoot from what Bryce is saying on this, the run game, the diversity of the run game, the sequencing in the run game to set the defense up to lean a certain direction, then catch him another way. That's a part to really look for, and that it's like going from a little bit of the checkers to chess thing when it comes to the run game now versus where it's been.
Yeah, you mentioned the run game, and we brought it up on your recap yesterday. I don't remember who was. We saw Cooper Kupp lined up in the backfield.
Yep.
Yeah, right next to Darnold, and I don't know if that was the play where they kind of either shoveled it or did a little inside hand up to AJ Barner. But like that's the type of creativity that I think that we can expect from this team. So what I would like to think that we'll see at tonight's practice, a lot of under center play action, and getting the quarterbacks on the move. We saw a fair bit of it yesterday, and Brandon and Dan, you've done 5-6 practices at this point. How much under center play action or just general bootlegs have you seen in 11 on 11?
It's more than we've seen in 10 years.
Yeah.
It's I'd say it's more than 50%.
Yeah, and
that's probably because that's just what they're drilling on right now, and they're hammering on it. But it's so refreshing to see. It's so much fun seeing 2 backs in the backfield and seeing under center and design called rollouts. I mean, I've been screaming at the TV set or screaming at the field the last couple of years, because that was really something that I thought was a missed opportunity for Grubb last year, especially with the offensive line really struggling to protect. Because Geno did that well, and I just couldn't understand why they couldn't put him on the move. But yeah, those are the things you'll see. I would also say if you're going to watch one thing today and you haven't seen him practice yet, watch Cooper Kupp.
Yeah.
You'll come away feeling much better about the narrative that the Rams let him go because he's washed. He's broken down. He's not as quick or explosive anymore. He can't cut anymore. Just watch him. Just watch him. You'll walk away from today's practice feeling a lot better about number 10.
The other thing I'll add to all your guys' points about the offense is for people that have watched the Seahawks back when Mike Holmgren was calling plays and that offense was out there with Max Strong and Sean Alexander and Bobby Ingram and Darryl Jackson, the type of rollout, bootleg, and quick passing game, that is something that we will start to see again with this offense, which is something we really haven't seen for years now. And I think it's something that is almost kind of taken for granted in the NFL now at this point. We all like seeing the big plays down the field and the bombs, but these teams that seem to have the most success, like the Sean McVays, the Kevin O'Connells, the 49ers offense with Kyle Shanahan, they take what the defense is willing to give them and they will cut you 1,000 different ways. And once you finally try and collapse on something you think they're doing well, they'll hit you with their explosive play. And that's something I think we'll see more of from this team this year.
Yeah. And you know, you think about the 49ers offensive, it's not a bombs when they have their explosive plays. It's not always a deep shot to one of their star receivers, or like say for Kittle in San Francisco, or McCaffrey, or Ayuk when he's healthy, or for the Rams, whether it's Puka Nacua or Kupp when he was there. It's the yards after catch, and I'm really eager to see if we're going to see a more yak-heavy offense for the Seahawks, because I think that they actually have the talent. Certainly at the running back position, when Walker and Charbonnet are targets in the back, I don't expect them to be like heavy usage in the passing game as receiving backs, but you look at Jackson Smith and Jigba. He might not be a burner, but he can definitely. Well, I'm going to pause quickly because the Mariners just tied the game. Randy,
let's go.
Just tied it.
Randy
4-4.
Arozarena with the 2-run bomb in the 10th inning.
Yes.
Good vibes only.
Yeah.
His team, what was the exit velocity on that? 112 miles an hour.
He absolutely crushed that thing.
424 feet.
Wow.
Yeah, so
Mookie's got the best seat now.
yeah, the vibes are great right now. Now finish the job and you already take the series. You don't even have to wait till Sunday. You got the series already 3-0 before the fourth game. But anyway, with the yards after catch, you look at Jackson Smith and Jigba. He might not be Tyreek Hill, and again, nobody really is at the receiver position. He might not be one of those elite sprinter level guys down the field, but he's got that short area quickness that reminds me of Doug Baldwin. And he can be so shifty in the open field that he made a lot of great plays in the open field on those screen passes that Ryan Grubb called so often. Like, for all I can fault regarding Ryan Grubb, that was one of the few things that was working more often than not. So you have JSN, you look at Torrey Horton too, and Horton, not just a deep threat, but you look at that Colorado game that Corbin Smith mentioned. They were running shallow crossers repeatedly, and Colorado could not stop Horton. So he's another guy who can get going in the open field without being an exceptionally fast player, but he is a fast guy for sure. And then you think about even at the tight end position, Elijah Arroyo. I think he could be another yak option. And Bryson mentioned it, the usage of the middle of the field, those seam passes to the tight ends. I think that, and I expect to see some leak outs, tight end going across the formation, even for a guy like Jake Bobo. We could see something like that where it turns lower air yards per target, I guess, but it's still big plays. Like the deep shots are going to be there. Sam Darnold is going to sling it. I think that's in his nature. But there are going to be opportunities for the types of yards after catch plays that the Seahawks really have not been good at for the longest while. Like DK Metcalf, we know his speed, but in terms of being a yak option, just physically it's hard for him to make people miss in the open field without trying to like bully people.
Come on, Mookie, but what about Tyler Lockett, that yak monster, man?
Yeah, well, it's before
Back in the day.
before the injury, before the broken leg, like he really was a burner. So, I'm eager to see what happens with the Seahawks offense, how different it can look. Not from Grubb, like forget Grubb, like other Pete offenses, meaning the end of the Schottenheimer era, the Waldron years. Like, can it look different enough and look more closely to what we have been dealing with for years with the Rams and 49ers offenses, where, man, they're getting 3rd and 15. They're not even throwing it at the sticks. They just throw a 5-yard pass, and one guy makes a man miss in the open field, and suddenly you got a first down. I want that to be the Seahawks, where you have those options where the only way to get an explosive play can't be a deep shot. It has to be you can attack the underneath and intermediate and turn those plays into big gainers.
Even the bubble screen you speak of that worked pretty well at times last year in Grubb's offense. This year we're seeing it. We saw some of it run yesterday, but there's play action added to it. There's a little RPO, little wrinkle added to it. It's not just grab it and go. Got a couple of starred comments to get to. I don't think Martin was here at the beginning of our discussion when we talked about the offensive line. Is this our starting O-line? Cross, Zabel, Olu, Bradford, Lucas. Now Corbin hedged and said, wait a minute, Sundell. But from what we saw, while they are moving Sundell all the way around, and we've seen him literally play 4 of the 5 spots in the last couple of days, he's not running with the ones on a regular basis at any of those spots. Bradford was the unquestioned number 1 the last 2 days in practice. So if you're asking me today, if they're playing a game tomorrow, I think that's the starting 5.
Yeah, I would agree. If I'm laying down money, Sundell's been moved all over the place. Not like he's just sitting there at right guard. It's all over that line that he's being used. So
even left tackle we saw on Thursday. We looked at each other like, did they switch jerseys? What's happening here?
I think that they're just going to hope that they can get by with Bradford. A lot of the right guard, you got the help from the center because your strong side of the formation more often than not. So they're probably hoping that they can, guide that Zabel can hold up in one-on-ones and pass pro to slide that double team over. I'm guessing that's what they're going to try to do when it's all said and done.
To be fair, Jalen Sundell was an FCS first-team All-American at left tackle his senior year at NDSU. They kicked him out there out of need. He was playing center, and he ended up winning All-American. So there you go.
There you go.
Martin, also for Martin, thanks for the super chat. Is this our running back room at the start of the season? Walker, Charbonnet, Martinez, Halani. I think they only go with 3 running backs.
I don't think Halani's on there. I think they're going to sneak him through to the practice squad because I think what would be your 4th back there is Robbie Oates in the fullback position. I think it's Martinez, Charbonnet, and Walker. And I think it's going to be interesting to see how the Charbonnet and Walker carries get split throughout the season.
Yeah. Let's not bury the lead here. I think it says Martin Lawrence. So we're having famous actors in the chat. So we got
a cool audience.
Yeah, absolutely. So we got to see if Will Smith's also in the chat.
Oh wait, no, he's from Britain. He's from
he's
from your side.
Across the shore.
Oh, he's from across the shore. Okay, well,
so.
well, maybe he's in Europe promoting something. But yeah, I think that's your top 3. I don't think they keep a 4th running back, and I don't think that there's really a need to keep a 4th running back when 4th running back practice squad. You can poach from the practice squad. They're always available.
By the way, we're not under attack. That is the Blue Angels today, part of Seafair. This feels like a very leading question. Feed me more Seahawks. Thank you for the super chat. Who do you think is the most overhyped team in the NFC?
Ooh.
I feel like he wants us to say 49ers.
Yeah, probably. That's a tough one on that.
I think Minnesota.
I'm going to say the Lions.
That's another one, too. I'd go with Minnesota.
They looked sloppy as hell the other night, but they didn't play any starters, so it's tough to tell. I mean, Kyle Allen's not going to be running the show there for...
Yeah. Part of me was about to say Green Bay because there's this high expectation that they're going to take that next step because Jordan Love is making all these trick shot throws. Now, they may have their number 1 receiver, having drafted Matthew Golden, but I think the jury's still out on that front and how consistent that offense can be because Green Bay's had its ups and downs through Love's 2 full seasons as a starter. But San Francisco, as far as overhyped, if they're healthy, then sure, they can be a threat. But I think that we have to acknowledge, and this is not like being Seahawks cheerleaders or anything, but Trent Williams is a future Hall of Fame left tackle, but it can go on him at any moment. And if he is not himself, if he's not his usual great self, then I think life is going to be pretty hard for Brock Purdy because Williams is still their best offensive lineman. And then the wide receiver position, Ayuk is probably not going to be playing the first few weeks of the season, which would include the opener against the Seahawks.
Sure.
So Jawan Jennings, we're talking about trade requests. Obviously, Jawan Jennings a little bit further down the pecking order compared to what's been going on with Micah Parsons and Terry McLaurin. But if they don't get a deal with Jawan Jennings or if he holds out or doesn't play, whatever, your depth at wide receiver, if you're San Francisco, is really not that impressive. And then Christian McCaffrey, another person who, brilliant when he's healthy, but he missed so much of last season. And he's had significant injuries throughout his career. So I think that's both the 49ers and the Rams, in a way, their ability to contend is heavily dependent on their older players or the more oft-injured players staying healthy. So for the 49ers, all the players I just mentioned on offense. Yeah. But for the Rams, it's obviously Matthew Stafford. And he's not been practicing at camp so far. And 37 years old with a history of back issues. Like Jimmy G has given the Seahawks fits before, but even Sean McVay probably can't have a consistently functioning offense with Garoppolo for a full season. So, yeah, that's a very interesting question that I hadn't really thought about a whole lot. I like the Detroit answer as much as it pains me to say because I like Dan Campbell. But when you lose both coordinators, And you also lose key players on the offensive line.
Yeah.
So Zeitler went to Tennessee, and
Ragnow
Ragnow retired.
retired.
So
That's
you're relying
huge.
on Tate Ratledge to be your starting center, I believe, or he's going to be starting somewhere on the
Sounds
offensive
like
line.
it might be an option.
So that's going to be like, is Jared Goff going to become Jared Goof again? If things are just not clicking the way that they were with Ben Johnson, because Ben Johnson got the best out of Goff, no denying it. Even better results than McVay managed to get, and McVay did a really good job with Goff. So if Goff regresses even a little bit, then that offense, as much as I love the running game, is not as scary. And the NFC North could be really tough. I mean, if Chicago takes that step with Ben Johnson and Caleb Williams at quarterback, the Lions, we expect them to regress because it's hard to get better than 15-2. But they could be in a real dogfight. And they could be one of those, we were at the top, and then suddenly regression hits, and it's like back to being the Lions.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and my point to the Vikings is you're dealing now with basically a rookie quarterback.
Yes.
Didn't play at all last year in J.J. McCarthy. They assume he's going to be plug and play. Well, behind him, you have Sam Howell. Sam Howell is now your backup quarterback there, not Sam Darnold, who is who they signed last year before the injury occurred to be a capable backup in case. They've signed Will Fries. They signed Ryan Kelly there and put all this money into their offensive line. And everyone's expecting them to kind of just be where they were last year in a lot of respects. Okay, we just plug in J.J. McCarthy and it's all going to be okay. Well, we all know rookie quarterbacks tend to go through some growing pains throughout a season. And in that division with Green Bay, with Detroit, with Chicago, you fall a few games behind, it's hard to make up that space. And the NFC West isn't a slouch division. You know, you got 4 teams basically. They're all capable of being above 500. Minnesota could fall way back, but I think a lot of people expect them to stay where they were because all they're really looking at is, it's McCarthy that's been inserted, and they've added 2 guys to the offensive line who both have injury issues.
Yeah, if Sam Darnold last year, if you consider what he put up as far as statistically goes, and put that in comparison to rookie quarterbacks and how they played in the league, that would be an all-time rookie year as far as his productivity. And McCarthy, even if he can stay healthy, is very unlikely to replicate anywhere close to those same kind of results.
Yeah, and I was a big McCarthy fan coming out in the draft. I'm a believer in him, but that's just some of the big assumptions that are made in the offseason just surprise me. Like how willing, I'm tempted to say 49ers in my answer to this because I just think how willing all the pundits are to put him back up at 11, 12 wins, given all those injuries you talked about on the offense, given the fact they haven't really addressed the offensive line outside of Pooney in the last few years, even though their fan base is screaming for it. And just being able to think that you can plug 3/4 of a new defensive line in out of the draft and those guys are going to hit the ground running and be ready to go, that's a tough one for me. But I think my answer to this one would have to be Arizona. It happens every year. It happens every damn offseason. The birds are going to fly high and they think they're the next best thing and the flavor of the month and yeah, I liked Monty Austin-Fort's first 2 drafts just as kind of volume drafts and bulk drafts. I didn't think there was a lot of blue chip talent there. This year's draft has some players that I like, but they're all boom or bust. They're all guys with major injury questions or personality questions. They're already without Walter Nolan. He's going to miss all of training camp, their first-round pick. They're down their first 2 starting corners. And I've just never been a Kyler Murray believer. When he signed that extension as a Seahawks fan, I said, thank you, Arizona, for committing to him. I just don't think he's special. I don't think he's a winner. And I don't understand why there are several publications and prognosticators out there who have the Cardinals picked to finish 3rd in the division and the Seahawks 4th. Yeah. And I don't get it.
I don't either.
So what you're telling me, hold on a second regarding the Cardinals, that them re-signing LJ Collier is not enough to put them in contention. Just
I mean,
so you're gonna
got him
hold on.
close.
The
Got him
Sox
close.
sensei.
I don't want to understate the importance of a 4th-string edge player, but, there's better guys out there.
He's the
There's
best,
a lot.
he's the best 4th-string edge player that barely plays in the league.
If you want to have fun, look at the Cardinals' full depth chart. It's just littered with former Seahawks. There's tons of them. Yeah, it's kind of fun to look at. They just, it's not. And they can't beat us. So I don't.
I think
don't
McDonald's
really
got. I think he's got that offense on lock. I think he knows just how to play Kyler Murray. I think he knows how to have the pass rushers roll on that, the stack fronts, forcing Kyler to try to throw to the middle of the field, which he can't do. Those 2 games last year, McDonald was in his bag as much as any time, and I know part of it was Leonard Williams just beating Evan Brown's butt left and right over and over again, because Evan Brown's not a left guard in this league.
But he's still their starter.
He's out there again this year.
Well, even Pete's defenses, other than the 2020 crazy overtime game, they have historically been very good at shutting Kyler Murray down. I think about the 2022 season, so Gino's first year as starter, and hold them to 9 points, and the only touchdown they got was a block punt. And in the rematch in Arizona, I think Gino throws a pick 6, but otherwise they score 2 touchdowns, and one of them was late when they were already down 2 scores. And Shelby Harris absolutely dominated Arizona's offensive line, and I think so did Bruce Irvin. And then the 2023 season, I'm trying to remember, that was the Josh Dobbs game. But the end of the season, I think that Murray wasn't particularly effective either. So historically, whether it's Carroll or McDonald, there are certain styles of quarterback that the Seahawks defense has been able to contend well with, and with the team speed on this defense, that's a bad matchup for Kyler Murray, because Kyler really does run like he's in a cartoon. I mean, it is like a cloud of dust when it comes to him running with his short steps, and I don't deny that he can really beat some guys in the open field. Going to be hard to do that against a team that has Reek Woolen and Devin Witherspoon in the secondary. We're not even including the team speed that they can have in the front 7 and guys who are capable of chasing him down from behind.
Well, and, Brandon pointed out how successful that, Mike McDonald's defense was in shutting him down. Nick Amenawari is going to play heavily into that game plan now this year, too. That's just yet another guy that can play close to the line of scrimmage and kind of shadow him wherever he goes if that's how they choose to do it. So, let's see. We got any more starred? Here we go. Here's another one from Kevin Mullen. Kyle Shanahan cleans his AirPods with his tongue. Breaking news. Wait, here.
There might be a few Niner fans that agree with that.
This just in. According to Kevin Mullen, Kyle Shanahan cleans his AirPods with his tongue. That's so gross. I don't even like to take my AirPods out of my ears with my hands. Question, is Christian Haynes in Benson's doghouse? Haven't heard anything on his camp. We did talk about this with Corbin earlier. It does sound like it might be a work ethic thing.
Yeah, tough love. It sounds like what Corbin said, and that makes sense to what we saw in the field yesterday. There's just no situation, if the guy's healthy, that you're going to have him sitting out. It just doesn't make sense unless you're trying to send a message and you don't think it's resonating.
Why is Leguimina in the game?
It'll be interesting to see
out of
though.
arms.
It'll be interesting to see though today how much does Christian Haynes actually play, and how much is he involved in the scrimmage? Is he held out?
And Thursday, because preseason games can go either way. It can be like, all right, let's throw the guy out there that I'm mad at and make him play 80 snaps.
Yeah. Might be.
I honestly, that's what I'd like to see.
He's
throw
playing
him
some
out there.
psychological warfare with him,
Give him a chance to prove he's not the guy.
Yeah, and the fact that this is happening with 2 offensive line coaches, two different coaching staffs, and we got the same thing. So I remember last season when they were splitting time between Bradford and Haynes, and Bradford was just committing penalties every other play. Those first couple of weeks of the season, and we're wondering, why isn't Christian Haynes playing more? And then, well, guess what? The Rangers just got another run, so that might be the end of Leguimina's day. But anyway, Ryan Grubb was asked whether there was something lacking as far as Haynes needing playing time, as far as what is preventing him from getting more playing time. And he said technique and just strength. And I'm wondering if there's something else kind of underlying there regarding like conditioning or work ethic, as you said. But if those things are still a problem with a different coaching staff, then it might just have to be, he needs a boot up the ass to really get it figured out, because maybe the hints, as Corbin mentioned, and all you guys mentioned, Lomea getting reps over him, getting the start over him when Bradford went down. Lomea was a healthy scratch every game that season. Yeah. And then when Bradford went down to the Arizona game, we assume, okay, if he's out, then Christian Haynes is next man up. He'd been the one splitting snaps with Bradford this entire time. And then it doesn't happen. And I don't even remember Lomea being at right guard in preseason a whole lot. I thought he was at left guard. But even still, the fact that he got beaten in the pecking order by Lomea was already a sign. And then we see practice on Friday, and look who's absorbing Haynes' snaps. It's Lomea again.
Right.
So,
and it has to be something like that because the reps on tape aren't bad. I thought he played well in that Detroit game last year, and that's why I was so shocked when they went with Lomea later on. It's got to be some of that intangible stuff. It's a real bummer. I've argued with people over the last 6 months about there's people out there that think if you miss on a 6th or a 3rd round draft pick, you should be fired as a general manager. It's a fireable offense. It's, sometimes the hit rate's not great at that level of the draft, but you'd still like those players to become starters. Yep. So it is a real bummer. And it might not be over yet. We've seen guys bounce back from being in the doghouse before, but it sure isn't trending in the right direction at the moment.
Speaks how hard it is to get offensive linemen. This is supposed to be one of the safer guards, if not the safest guard, but maybe a limited to the ceiling, but you've got a good floor. You're supposed to be getting 2 years started at Connecticut. I think he gave up like 1 sack in 2 years or something like that. This was a guy that was supposed to, just goes to show you, though, how much of a crapshoot it can even be for those guys that are safe in this realm of positioning.
Yeah.
What if it's just Jim Moore getting revenge on the Seahawks for firing him so early that he
But he
gave
also
the most ringing endorsement of Christian Haynes?
Give us your honest opinion.
It didn't reveal everything.
He also fit that Seahawks profile where he went to Mobile last year and just blew everybody away. He was one of the best players there all week. Scouts loved him. Played some center there too. It's a real shocker, especially because I liked him and I was ecstatic we got him at 81. I thought we were fortunate to get him there. I think every mock draft I did leading up to that draft, he wasn't there at 81. I wasn't never able to take him. So I took a whole lot of Dominic Pooney that year in mock drafts, and he ends up going seven spots later and looks like, clearly the superior player. So it stings.
Yeah,
You're not going to hit on all of them.
No.
Right?
No.
Anything else? Anything else we need to talk about before we head over to the stadium?
Nothing really that I can think about, other than I'm really excited to see if Tyrese Knight gets more looks as a
some of that
rusher.
edge stuff.
We saw that little double A gap look with him and Ernest up at the line, and then they both drop back, and then Darnold has to hit his check down. But there are so many ways that this defense can be creative, and I agree with Corbin that I expect to see more blitzing. They were a pretty pedestrian team in terms of their blitz rate. I think that changes this year. Not saying they're going to be. This is not going to be like Wink Martindale levels of heavy blitzing or anything like that, but I can absolutely see them being in the top half of the league comfortably in blitz rates where, yes, they can get home with 4, but the blitzes and the creativity which they can blitz or generate those sim pressures and just have quarterbacks all confused and the offensive line doesn't know who to block, that's what's got my juices flowing as far as this Seahawks defense. This Seahawks defense is, I think, the most talented that they have had since the end of the Legion of Boom era. And that's not a hot take. So this is not a hot take like Corbin said with Nick Hemingway getting the gold jacket on. If that happens, we're going to play this clip at his ceremony in 2040 something or whatever. But the talent is just...
He'll probably ask Corbin to induct him if that's the case. He'll probably be giving the speech.
We should vouch for that right now. Corbin Smith gets to deliver the speech. But
another thing I want to look for today and Thursday is inside linebacker usage, because I've been kind of operating on the assumption as I try to project the roster that, you got to borrow from a couple spots to get a fullback and a third quarterback. We've talked about that quite a bit. And that I just don't know if there's a need for a 4th inside linebacker on the 53-man roster. You have guys you can elevate on game day because of the packages they're going to play and the way that they're going to go about things. I just don't know that there's going to be that need. But I know that that's a huge question out there whenever we're talking about these roster battles and the roster construction. Is like, I don't know if there's depth at inside linebacker. Well, who was our 4th linebacker last year on the roster? How much did he play? Who would it be this year? If Derek Jackson makes the roster, or Josh Ross, is he going to play? Probably not, unless somebody gets hurt.
And you also last year got a dynamic inside linebacker for a 4th round pick before the trade deadline, which is more evidence of the fact that it's a devalued position in the NFL and one that you probably can typically go find a functional player if you need to input him, if you have some injury history that comes up.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, to me, the 3rd linebacker is important. Once we get to the 4th, if you're down to your 4th linebacker, you're probably screwed anyway. So I'd like to see more depth there, but if they just roll out with Jones and Knights and Drake Thomas, and I don't think we mentioned it either today or yesterday, but he had that cool pass breakup in double coverage with Nehemiah Pritchett. I think you did mention on Friday.
That was nice.
On a probably an ill-advised throw by Drew Lock, but it's still a nice play. So those 3, that's totally fine. Like, is anybody going to lose sleep if Josh Ross doesn't make the team? He only ever plays special teams, and there are a lot of options at special teams, like keeping Brady Russell and getting rid of Josh Ross or waiving Josh Ross. It kind of balances out because Russell plays way more special team snaps. He could be a special teams captain this year. So
And Patrick O'Connell always finds a way to get 10 tackles in a preseason game.
Yeah,
so he'll
exactly.
be out there doing his
He's
thing
the-
again, too.
he's the Ben Burke-Irvin.
He is the Ben Burke-Irvin.
John Radigan,
John Radigan. Yeah, you can just,
right.
Isaiah Kazavinsky.
Now that's a deep cut, Isaiah Kazavinsky, or Nico Kutavides, I think.
yeah.
So yes, those are all good.
We like
sport-
$10 handle names of middle linebackers,
yeah.
don't we?
Yes.
Like, those
Yeah.
got 9-syllable inside linebacker names.
Yeah, they're probably going to be playing quite a bit of nickel.
Yeah.
Well, we know that by default. You could see some dime packages where maybe you take one of the linebackers off the field and Eamon Warriors is like your auxiliary backer. So
And he hasn't done as much of it in training camp, but Greg Bell did point out that during OTAs he did a lot of that, and that DeAnthony Bell's played some weak side linebacker too. Yeah, it's kind of a hybrid position. Well, should we wrap this up? Get over to the stadium.
I think so.
Get over
Yeah.
and check it out.
If you guys are headed out there, come say hi to us. We're not shy. We'd love to chat it up with you. Thanks to everybody out there for coming. Wait, we got to do one more of these. There we go. We got a big crowd here. We got shout out to Amy and Joey Galloway.
Zach,
Amy and Jack, thanks for coming. Let's do this.
thank
'cause
you
we
guys for coming out.
Got to take this out the
Appreciate
right
you.
way.
it's a bunch.
Mookie Alexander, make sure to read and support Fieldgulls. Brandon Kane from the Hawks Nest. It was great to meet you in person and hang out with you. Safe travels back home.
Thank you.
We're not parting ways yet. We're all going out to dinner tonight after the scrimmage, and then Bryce Coutts will be headed back up north tomorrow as well. So always good to see you. Again, yeah. If you guys see us out there, come shake our hand and say hello. Until then, as we always say on this show, forever and always,
Go
Go
Hawks.
Hawks.